Good evening and welcome to another episode of AFC East Bros. Kyle and Gary, one Jets fan and one Bills fan, two brothers talking all things AFC East as we do every single week. Every single team in the AFC East won this past week except my New York Jets. So I don't know if I sound more enthusiastic or what, but it wasn't a good Sunday for me to say the least, Gary. But for you, I think it was a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny how week to week your attitude could change and your mood could change. And, coming into last week, I was really down, thinking about the team, Greg Roman firing, a lot of question marks to be answered for my ball club. And, we got really shellacked on Thursday night by your Jets. And, now coming in this week, I think the shoe's on the other foot. If I'm a Jets fan, I have a lot more questions than I do answers. And if I'm a Bills fan, I have a lot more answers than I do questions. So that's what I'm saying. It's a long season. You have to go through the progressions, and it's still a lot of football to be played. And there's going to be a lot of highs and lows, especially if you're a Jets and a Bills fan this season.
Yeah, it really doesn't get too much lower than that game out in Kansas City. And it seems like, teams in the AFC East, they don't have a good time when they go to Kansas City. You think back to, week 4 of the 2014 season, the Super Bowl season for the Patriots. They got shellacked on Monday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs. What happened last year? One of the worst Bills losses. Not that the Bills played bad out in Kansas City, but it was a close game, tough fought, but one of the toughest losses for a Bills fan, and it was at a crucial point in the season when they lost in Kansas City last year. And then my Jets just got absolutely trounced out there. I know our dad, I don't know if you spoke to him, he probably was, so happy, probably talking so much smack, and I wouldn't be shocked if he calls in tonight just to talk some extra trash.
Yeah, I actually picked him up from the airport and dropped him off. And a grin was a mile long, from ear to ear. He knew his team absolutely destroyed the Jets. And, it wasn't even a close ball game, and he was giddy as soon as he got in the car, and he couldn't wait to tell every story that he had in the stadium. I was happy for him, Kyle. I definitely felt for you and your team because it was just probably one of the worst butt kickings I've seen by under Todd Bowles and this Jets team.
Yep, but I guess good news for the AFC East fans out there is we had the dreaded 0-2 start for the Buffalo Bills, and we had the dreaded 0-2 start for the Miami Dolphins. And after they calculated this, every year teams start 0-2, and they seem to adjust the percentage every year. And the percentage at the beginning of the season was if you go 0-2, you have a 12% chance at making the playoffs versus an 88% chance of not making the playoffs. And those odds are really, really bad. Now, I don't know how much that percentage goes down if you go to 0-3. But I don't know of any teams. I know that there's teams that won the Super Bowl going 0-2. I think both those Giants teams, 2007 and 2011 Giants, both won the Super Bowl going 0-2. But I don't think there's a single team in NFL history that has started 0-3 and then has went on to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Also, that 2011 Ravens team went 0-2 and won the Super Bowl as well. So there's been a few cases. And you know what, Kyle? It's so early in the year and a lot happens. I mean, look at right now. Look at teams like Carolina, Arizona. There's various other teams out there that were, talking about Super Bowl favorites, and they're 1-2. So, you can't write them off this early. I like Doug Marone's approach when he talks about winning quarters. So, if the Bills go 2-2 in this next game, they tied in the quarter. They didn't lose the quarter. And, next quarter, next 4 games, same thing with the Dolphins. If they could win this next one against Cincinnati, they tied the quarter. So, if you break it down to 4 quarters, 4 games at a time, that's the best way to look at a season. So that's one thing I could take positive from Doug Marrone was the way he approached a season.
I was just about to say, Gary saying something that he likes about Doug Marrone, post-Doug Marrone resignation. I never thought I would have heard that. But anyway, let's get to the let's get to the phones, and let's get on a guy who I would say is somewhat of a dear Twitter friend of both you and I, constantly having conversations left and right with us, and that is Mr. Brian. Am I pronouncing your last name correct? Peckinpah?
Yes, it is actually. That's correct.
How about that? Now, Brian, you are out in, is it Alaska currently? Or help me out here.
I just got back from Alaska. I'm actually in the border of Oregon and California right now, Crescent City.
Okay. So you are you close to where? Is that close to Portland, where our buddy Ben Blessington's from?
I'm about, I want to guess about 8 hours from that. I was just in Portland not that long ago either, because I was fishing out of Newport, Oregon as well.
It's crazy to think because Gary and I are both from New Jersey, and driving anywhere in the state, if you drive 2 hours to any place in New Jersey, that's really far. I mean, we think we're in I guess border central northern Jersey, and for us to drive all the way down to Atlantic City is 2 hours, and we think, oh, that's such a hike. But New Jersey's so small compared to states like Oregon and those West Coast states. But anyway, Brian, what is on your mind, my man?
A lot of things, I guess. How bad the Dolphins really are, and how the offensive line cannot open holes for the running game, but they can't pass protect Tannehill, which is a surprise.
Yeah. Let's pause on that subject right there, Brian. Let's stay correct. Let's not call Brian a Twitter friend of ours. He's a friend of ours. Period. And let's talk about that offensive line real quick, because that's something I noted down that I noticed they really struggled, Kyle, and especially what was shocking. I told you in the beginning of the year you had a bunch of offensive tackles playing guard spots, and I thought that they would be bad in run blocking. But Kyle, this last game, that pocket was getting pushed right in Tannehill's face. Brian, did you notice what I was seeing that whole game? It seemed like they didn't have an answer for that D-line of Cleveland's.
Yeah, I noticed they were having a hard time with stunts as well. I mean, Tunsil's been having that problem in general, and they finally they took Jawan James off the field in the fourth quarter because of the fumble off Tannehill.
Yeah, and it's not just that fumble that he gave up late in that game. And honestly, the Dolphins should have lost that game because of Jawan James. Because when you get that strip sack at the end, it was a 46-yard field goal. The way kickers kick in the NFL nowadays, they're making that kick about 80% of the time. So the Dolphins should have lost. And the Browns kicker, Parkey, who, I believe he was trash when he was with the Eagles, if I'm correct, and the Eagles cut his bum self. But he's really bad. But Jawan James, it's not just the one turnover that he caused, the potential game-winning turnover that he caused. He also, if you look at the second Tannehill interception, Jawan James was getting pushed right into Tannehill's lap, and whoever the defensive lineman was who was rushing hit Tannehill on that throw, altered the trajectory of the pass, to which it was then intercepted, and that one actually went for a pick six.
Yeah, I really think he needs to be addressed. I've talked about all last year too that we need to look at a replacement for him, but since guard play was so bad, people tend to not look at Jawan James and just looked at the offensive guards. And we end up drafting a tackle opposed to a guard.
And it's, you think about, who's been sacked more than any other quarterback over the last 5 seasons. It's not even close. It's Ryan Tannehill. And you can't just say it's the quarterback and he holds onto the ball too long. I guess that is somewhat is an issue with Tannehill, especially when he was a rookie learning early on. But it's mostly the offensive line play. But Miami has tried to address the offensive line. Can you think of any other offensive line besides the Dallas Cowboys that has that many first-round picks on it? You're talking Jawan James, first-round pick. You're talking, I know he's not playing right now, and he gets hurt quite frequently in Pouncey, a guy who you've questioned, Brian, but Pouncey's a first-round pick. Obviously, you have Tunsil, who's a first-round pick. And Brandon Albert, Gary, is he a first or a second-round pick?
He's a first-round pick.
He's a first-round pick as well. Granted, he's on his last legs. He's also injury-prone, but you have so much high first-round picks and what theoretically should be high talent, yet they just don't produce for whatever reason.
Actually, Albert didn't even practice today.
I mean, that's no shock. I will say this, too, about Jawan James. I thought that was a horrible pick. And I remember watching the draft, and people were like, this guy? I think it was Mayock who really criticized it. This guy had him as like a second, third round talent, and he's going at pick 19 overall. And I was arguing with Dolphins fans over Twitter and through different podcasts and stuff this offseason. Juwan James is not very good, and people try to tell me, no, he's serviceable, he's okay, he's steady. No, he's not.
Yeah.
Gary, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you used the word serviceable. That's a word that should not be used with a first-round pick. When you're saying that your first-round pick a couple years ago is just serviceable, that's not a good sign. And Brian, I would be really concerned, but I got to tell you this. Adam Gase called him out, and this is not an Adam Gase guy. He was not with Adam Gase when he was drafted. And I like the fact that such a young coach is saying, hey, listen, I'll yank you, man. And I have no problems yanking you. That shows a lot because, correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, Adam Gase is, 38, 39 years old?
Brian, you might know his age better than I do. I know he's young. I know he's one of the younger coaches.
I think he's 37.
Well, that shows a lot from a guy who's that young and has no problem saying, this guy was an established starter. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Brian, his rookie season, he had to go to left tackle, and he did pretty well his rookie year, I would say. I remember he had a pretty good performance his rookie season. I remember going against the Bills, he had a really good game. And I thought to myself, maybe, the Dolphins were right when they drafted this kid because, Kyle, I shared the same thoughts as Mayak and what you were pointing out, that I wasn't really high on the kid during the draft. And when he got drafted by the Dolphins, it was quite a shock. But when he had his rookie season, he stepped in at left tackle. He looked good. He looked like he belonged. Now he looks like he's regressed, and he looks like he's struggling mightily. But I really respect Adam Gase for being quite blunt with him and saying, hey, listen, I can't, you're a liability.
I think a big thing with him is that he bounced around, too, on the offensive line and having different schemes under him. He went from, like you said, from right tackle to left. He even played guard, I think, a game or two. He just never been able to strictly just be on one position and learn that scheme, and I think it has regressed him to a significant amount to maybe even being a second starter, maybe? Second player?
Yeah, I mean, they might have to think about putting Bushrod or someone else at that right tackle position.
I was thinking Tunsil, personally. If Albert doesn't want to go inside, why not just put Tunsil on the outside?
Yeah,
he's a true tackle, anyways.
Well, they're gonna have to rearrange some pieces because Tannehill cannot keep getting hit. He cannot keep getting pressured. Something's got to change in this young man's career. I mean, Kyle, like you pointed out, this guy's been hit multiple times over the course of his career, and it far exceeds any other quarterback. The second place guy's not even close to him. So something's got to change. Miami's got to fix it real fast.
But that being said, Tannehill has only been sacked 5 times in the first 3 games. By now, it'd been 15, and they only gave up one sack last week. I think 3 to Seattle, and I think they gave up none to the Patriots.
Yeah, well, sacks are half the battle.
That's true.
The QB pressures, the hits. I mean, I saw Cleveland definitely getting in the backfield. I saw them definitely pushing the pocket. Tannehill needs time. And, thank God number 14's on that team. I tell you what, Kyle, you're not the biggest Landry fan, but he is a heck of a safety blanket. And,
can I correct my viewpoints about Jarvis Landry, please?
Please do so.
Let me air this out.
All right.
I actually wanted the Jets to take Jarvis Landry because I thought they could get him later on in the second round or third round because when you looked at his combine numbers, everyone was thinking this guy was going to fall off the face of the earth. He was going to really slide in the draft. But you knew when you watched his tape, solid hands, he plays really hard, he can be a contributor. And I saw him as value as a second, third round pick, especially, we weren't picking like early on in that second round. So, but because of who he is, because of his fanboy status, because of the his Instagram profile and the way that he catches one-handers with Odell Beckham and this LSU type hype, and the way that he puts up fantasy numbers, and let's be honest, there's so many casual fantasy fans out there. I go to the barbershop, and Gary, it really irks me. You have so many know-it-alls or wannabe know-it-alls in the barbershop acting like they know what they're talking about. Oh, wow, the Dolphins got Arian Foster. Yo, they're going to be bound for the playoffs, man. That's a huge pickup for them. Like, have you been watching football over recent years? Arian Foster's not the same player anymore. but they look at the fantasy numbers and stuff. You know, a bunch of wannabe people that think they know what they're talking about. Jarvis Landry's a great fantasy player, and that's why Drew Gear took him so early in our fantasy draft, which is a PPR league. But he's not a great number one receiver. He's not a number one receiver. He is what he is. He's a dominant slot receiver, and I would take that on the Jets. I would, no problem. But if you're talking about giving Jarvis Landry a $13, $14 million contract in the next 2 years, that is a joke. So I would like him. I think he's a fine player. He's got overrated hands. There's no doubt about that. And he's overrated in general as a player. But he's still a good, solid player that you'd like on your team.
Well, let's ask
actually
our
funny for me. I'm one of the Dolphin fans actually not a fan of him actually.
What? Get
way.
out of here.
No. Let me. Okay. I mean,
all right.
As a slot receiver, there's a lot of good slot receivers out there. I mean, Devon Best did pretty much what he was doing for Miami until he got hurt, until he went to the Lions. So he really had the same amount of the same player, except Devon Best actually had a little bit of quickness to him. I mean, I don't think Landry's bad. I mean, I just think people overrate him. His hands are good, but not great. Everyone overrates his hands. He cannot play in the backfield, and the Dolphins need to stop doing that. They need to stop throwing him the ball in the backfield and just let him make plays around the linebackers.
Hey,
that's where his best thing is.
Brian, I want to get your opinion on this. And this is something that I think I've noticed, but more and more people are starting to talk about it. And since people started talking about it more, you start to see it more when you watch the Dolphins tape. It seems like every time this guy catches a ball, he runs back to try to make people miss. And sometimes when he does that, because he's not super fast, you know, like let's say you get contacted by a defender and the defender shoves you back 5-10 yards. Well, you get the forward progress. You're not going to lose any yards. But if you voluntarily, like Jarvis Landry does sometimes, run back 3, 4, 5 yards and then you get tackled, you're losing yards. And he seems like he does that all the time. Does that irk you as a Dolphins fan?
Yeah, it annoys me. It also annoys me. It seems like he looks at the direction where he wants to go before he even catches the ball, and I think that causes him to drop some passes as well. Because he doesn't have that speed, so I think he's trying to look where he needs to go before the ball gets to him, and then he loses concentration when he catches that ball.
Hey Brian, we got the phone line stacked tonight, but before we let you go, I got to get your take on Tannehill because it's a big thing right now. You know, people are coming out, or they thought that he was going to come out, put up a 30, 40, possibly a 50 burger on the lowly Cleveland Browns. He's at home right now. It's the opening of the new Hard Rock Stadium. Ryan Tannehill is going to tear it up. He didn't do that. Obviously, we already said that there are outside factors that cause that not to happen. But what's your stance on Tannehill? Because you got some people, such as Travis Wingfield, who came on here a couple weeks ago, and he's a good friend of the show. He wrote an article recently that I tweeted out saying that that Ryan Tannehill is the better white quarterback from the 2012 draft class, more so than Andrew Luck. And, you know, then there are other people that say Ryan Tannehill, he shouldn't even be a starter in this league. So what is your stance on him? Because people are all over the map on this guy.
Yeah, I'm actually all over the map with him too because he's so inconsistent. Like you'll see flashes of what he can be, and then you'll see what he's not. Like the last 2 quarters, he seems like he's great. He seems like he's playing well, like he should be. And the first 2 quarters, he's a bum. So it's kind of like, I hate saying bum, but that's how he plays in the first 2 quarters. And ultimately, that averages out to an average quarterback. He's about 17th ranked right now. He has progressed. He has got a little bit better. His completion percentage was 61% last year. I think it's at 65 right now. So he has been progressing. I think he needs to go. Honestly, I know how good he is. I think we need to look what his value can be somewhere else because of all the mixed views on him. And if it's the fan base, it has to be in the locker room as well. Because there's a lot of wide receivers that came out of that and said the same thing, that Tannehill is not the player. So I think we need to move on from him if it doesn't progress by the end of this year to the significant amount and just look where we can go, hopefully in the draft or somewhere else.
All right, well, Brian, I got to ask you, based on that, Brian, I got to ask you a question. Let's say Ryan Tannehill basically has the same season that he had last year. Do you stay with him or do you move on?
No, I'd move on.
You'd move on. I'll tell you what, as a Jets fan, with Ryan Fitzpatrick as our quarterback, I would take Tannehill. If you guys want to get rid of him,
you do have Fitzpatrick to throw 6 interceptions.
It goes way beyond the 6 interceptions, though. But anyway, hey, Brian, thanks a bunch for calling in. And, now that you're back on the regular shores of the United States. I know, obviously, Alaska's part of the U.S.
For a couple months till about January.
Well, we hope you call in more, all right?
Hey, Brian, we better hear from you more often, all right?
All right. Well, you'll hear me on Twitter, but yeah, of course.
I know that. Well, I want to hear your voice, man. You got a good voice for radio.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right.
Take care, Brian.
All right, you too.
Thanks, Brian. Brian, a resident Dolphins fan right there.
Yeah, our Fins fans that call in are few and far between, so we need more of them for sure. But
you know what, though? Brian's always good for letting us know when our team is not up to par. It's one thing I like about Brian.
But give him credit, though, because he's not just one of those fans that comes out like...
No, he's knowledgeable, and that's what I like about Brian.
But he also he says what it is about his team. He just went and said Jarvis Landry. To say Jarvis Landry is a not such a great player out in Dolphins land, that's kind of like blasphemy. So, and he also said he's not too high on Tannehill. He said that he would move on from him if he continues on the same trajectory.
That's bold.
So that is bold.
Yeah.
All right, next we're going to get on our buddy Chris with the TIAN. Hey, Christian.
Hey, AFC bros, what's going on?
Christian,
how's it going?
Up,
I'm so jealous of you, man.
So I was hesitant to call in. I know I'd be getting a lot of hate tonight, but I have to call in because it's, you asked politely, and I don't mind calling in when we're 3-0. 0-3, probably a different story.
Hey, Christian, before we proceed with the conversation, I just want to play something that has to do with you.
Sure.
That's another issue. Right. All right. Let's get back to the listeners because they want to vent. Chris with a TIAN. I know you're not feeling too good right now, are you, my friend?
I'm not feeling too good, but I'm so glad you guys had a show today because I had the strangest, gayest, most pathetic dream last night.
I don't think you can say that.
Yeah. I mean,
that's okay. VFW does not necessarily support the views of all callers.
Not that there's anything
part-time hosts.
Not that there's anything wrong with the segment. Okay.
And just because you say that doesn't make the other stuff okay. Oh, it does. It was on Seinfeld, which you don't know because you never watch it.
You never watch it.
True.
Last night, in my dream, I'm at NIG Stadium, and Brady's throwing me passes in a pregame, and he's wearing a white vest, like a white warm-up thing.
You were right the way you described it.
See? So I said, why? I go, what? I go, NIG Stadium. What am I doing at NIG Stadium? So he finishes. I go, you ready? He goes, ready as I'll ever be. So I said, great. I go, can't wait. So he goes, when do you think you're going to die? And I looked at him and I go, what are you talking about? He goes, when do you think you're going to die? I go, I don't know. Hopefully not for a very long time. Why? He goes, we got the results back. It's not good. I go, what are you talking about? What results? What are you talking about? And he started crying. and I swear to God. So I go, I'm not going anywhere. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what results. And I took my hand and I wiped the tear from his face.
It's getting what you said and more by the minute.
Hold on. So I woke up at exactly 4:11 a.m. And I woke up and I popped up in my bed. And here's the most pathetic part of the dream.
No way. No way it's any more pathetic than the other stuff you already said.
I go, oh, I wish they had a show tomorrow. I got to call the guy.
Hey, but the bigger issue is strange premonition that you got the results. You got the results and you got the show. And Brady was crying. You knew this was coming. You are a mystic.
But hold on now. Where's the Super Bowl this year?
Houston. NRG
Stadium.
But Brady was crying.
You already talked about that.
Yeah. Yeah, Brady was crying. And for some idiotic reason, you're on the field.
He's wearing a white vest.
All right, let me cut it off there. Hey, I had to admit, when I heard that the first time, I was crying, literally crying. I thought it was so funny.
Hearing that myself, I'm still alive, but that was pretty bad.
Yeah, hey, Christian, some dreams are best kept to yourself, but that was great.
Yeah, I'm so comfortable with those guys when I call in. It's like I'm talking to my friends, and I don't realize that it is recorded and actually is going to be there for a very long time online. So I guess I have to be a little bit more careful.
That was great. That's radio gold.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Did you know consciously, and was it like something that you were thinking about like actively in the days leading up to that dream, like that the Super Bowl is in Houston?
No. The first thing I did that morning when I got into work and I did my work and then I went online to see where the Super Bowl was. I didn't know it was in Houston. And then when I called them when I had the show, that's what really I said, "Wow, you got to be kidding me," which was which was a weird dream. Just got a whole lot weirder. So
that's my favorite part of that dream is when you're like, "Why the hell am I in NRG Stadium?" When you said that.
Yeah.
I think my favorite part was when he wiped Brady's tears.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then I woke up and I'm like, and my girl's looking at me. She's like, "What's the matter? Did you have a nightmare?" And I go, "No." I go, "Brady." She's like, "What?" And she's like, "Go to sleep."
Oh man. Christian, how did you do in our fantasy league? Did you lose this week? I think you did.
1-2. Yeah, I did. I'm getting killed in that league. Julio Jones and Alshon Jeffrey have done me no favors so far, and I had injuries at running back as well. Andrew Luck. I got to tell you, you guys just talked about Ryan Tannehill, and you mentioned Andrew Luck in there. That guy. I know he doesn't get a lot of help around him. They haven't done a whole lot to surround him with, talent, and acquiring Andre Johnson in the off season, and getting in a washed up running back and Frank Gore. But I expected that guy to be a lot better than he is now, and he's not. I don't know what you guys think about him, but he should be a lot better than he is.
Yeah.
For what he was billed, he should be a lot better than he is.
It seems like he took a few steps back, but I got to tell you, I think he has a lot of similar problems to Tannehill. His offensive line gives that guy no help whatsoever. The offensive line of the Colts has to be one of the worst in the league.
But it goes beyond that, though. It then goes into coaching because, okay, the Patriots don't have a good offensive line, but Christian, how quickly was Tom Brady getting out the ball last year? 2.what seconds?
2.1. It was, Chris Collinsworth shows that stat on Sunday Night Football. It's always under like 2.2. As soon as he takes a snap, it's gone. Yeah.
And the same thing with Fitzpatrick. The Jets don't have a good offensive line, especially pass blocking, but he gets the ball out quick. Now, he's obviously a way inferior quarterback to Brady. But Andrew Luck, especially last season, a bunch of 7-step drops. You can't do that when you have that bad of an offensive line. So, yes, it's personnel, and it's also coaching. And I know the PFW guys really think that Pagano is a buffoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just based on the games against us, anytime we play them, it's like they just wet right down their leg. They just, they gave them a pretty good game last year at Indy, but any time that they've come to Gillette, in the playoffs or even in regular season, they get smoked.
Yeah, absolutely. Christian, I got a big question for you since you're the resident Patriots fan.
Okay.
Who's playing quarterback this Sunday? Who's playing him, man?
I'm going to go with the galloping chicken. I'm going with Garoppolo.
Garoppolo?
Yep.
I think that's, and I can tell you this right now, Kyle, from everything I've been reading and from One Bill's Drive, that's who they're preparing for, is Jimmy G. I don't think that, but let me ask you a question now. Who's going to be the backup? Is Brissett going to be suiting up that day as well, or Edelman maybe?
The media had a field day with it last week when they didn't bring in a back, Brissett. And, they had Julian Edelman as the backup. I think this week, I don't think the Brissett thumb injury is as serious as it was first reported. He doesn't need surgery. He's not, it's basically he had it today. He had it taped up going out to practice. He went out to practice. Garoppolo didn't have a sling on his shoulder, which when I read that, I said, well, we didn't have a sling on it last week either, and I don't think you have a sling for an AC joint. I'm not a doctor, but I don't, it's not like a broken collarbone or something like that. So I'd say it's Garoppolo and Brissett, and I think Brissett will be ready to back him up if he goes, which I think he's going to go Garoppolo.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm hearing too. So all right, Christian, let's talk about last week's performance last Thursday. The Houston Texans traveled into Gillette Stadium, and really a masterful game plan by Bill Belichick and company. You got to give credit where credit's due. They really negated that Bill O'Brien defense, that Romeo Crennel defense, that was one of the top-ranked defense. I mean, J.J. Watt is back on the field and pitched a perfect game. It shut out 27 points, stifled Brock Osweiler. And Brock Osweiler, last year had a good game on you guys. So Kyle and I were definitely thinking there's no way the Tom Brady-less, Jimmy G-less Patriots are going to beat this good defense. And, once again, Kyle and I were made to look like fools. So give us your thoughts on the game.
Well, it wasn't just fans of other teams. It was also fans of the Patriots, myself included, that thought they were probably going to lose that game. The thing that blew me away the most was how just unprepared Houston looked, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They played right into the Patriots' hands. Patriots just played too deep, was not letting anything behind them. And Houston really played into that. 3rd and 8, you run a draw to Lamar Miller in the first quarter. You're down 3-0. It boggled the mind. And, Belichick earlier in the week said, this is going to be a game where special teams is going to factor in. And what he's doing with the kickoffs and not booming them through the end zone and forcing teams to return them, basically kicking them inside the 5-yard line where a guy's going to make a decision on whether or not to let it bounce into the end zone or take it out. And, to bring it out, and he's really taking a chance there were 2 fumbles because of that. And that's what the Patriots won on. But I was surprised, really, Bill O'Brien, and Romeo Crennel. These are guys that were with this team for years. And the last team that I expected to come in here and just absolutely turtle was them. And they did. That's exactly what happened. And J.J. Watt, every time he plays us, he does nothing. Yeah. Nothing. I mean, I think he may have one sack. He does. He is invisible. I mean, Marcus Cannon. I'm going to repeat that in case I didn't come through with it. Marcus Cannon was on him 12 times one-on-one and held him. He may have physically held him because that's probably the only way he could block him, but he held him and he blocked him. It absolutely blew me away. And give credit where Bill has a million of those game plans in his resume. He just when you think you're down and out and you're on your 3rd string quarterback and you're starting tight end, your best player on offense is, coming back, but he's, not anywhere where he is during midseason form. It was very surprising to dominate the way that they did.
Christian, I don't know if you saw this. I think it came out maybe like a little over a week ago. I just got wind of it, and I don't know if I'll ever read it or pick up a copy, but it certainly intrigued my mind. A guy by the name of Eric Friends, who's a Patriots fan, I believe, does a lot of work covering the Patriots. He wrote a book saying that Belichick is the greatest of all time, and on the cover it's a big image of Belichick, and then there's all the other great coaches of all time. There's Shula, there's, Tom Landry, there is, Vince Lombardi, and all the best coaches out there, and all their names are like crossed off in red, like basically like Xing them out. And it's the case, and I think the subtitle of the book is like the case for why Belichick is the greatest of all time, something like that. And this came out before that game, and as if there were a question like, who's currently the best coach in the league, there certainly was no question in my mind. But just after watching that performance, it's like, there's Belichick, and there's this everyone else. It's not even close. It is such a far gap that it's not even worth having a conversation. People like to hype up Bruce Arians and this guy and that guy. Literally, there is no one else close to Belichick. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, when you see, I have actually seen the book. I just haven't gotten it yet, but I did see that, that image. I think I was a tweet where I saw it on where all the names are crossed off, and so it's definitely something I want to read. But, yeah, I mean, I think Belichick's greatest strength is knowing all 3 phases of the game, and having input on all 3 phases of the game. Like, he was obviously known as a defensive coach, and he is a defensive coach. There's no question about that. Defensive coordinator, great defenses with the Giants. But, knowing the offense and the input that he has there, he sits and meets with the quarterbacks twice a week, separate from the team to review the offensive game plan with the quarterbacks. He has a huge handle on special teams. He'll be mic'd up tonight on Inside the NFL. And they had a little snippet early where they show him, and the special teams coach comes over to him and says, we're thinking here probably just booming it through, and he goes, no, kick it short, make him return it. And then there's a fumble. So that's his greatest strength, is really knowing, all the phases of the game, all the positions. I watched him down in training camp about 5 years ago, stand with the offensive lineman, and he was over there for probably a good 10 minutes, and all they were doing were working on their splits. That's all they were doing was working on the length of space between each guy and how much it needed to be. And on a run play, it's this, and on a pass play, it's that. It was fascinating. It really is. And he's just, he's a football coach. That's what he is. I'm a football coach. That's what I am. I'm a football coach. And there are very good coaches in the league, but right now he's at the top of his game. And 3-0 with backup quarterbacks, proof's in the pudding.
And for someone that thinks that stuff doesn't matter, working on splits in an NFL practice for 10 minutes straight, I mean, this is something that we do in high school practice, Gary. But to do it in the NFL, these guys are supposed to be consummate professionals. They're supposed to know all about this. Why waste such limited practice time on something like that? Well, if you think that doesn't matter, just think about certain things like, just botch plays like the butt fumble. People not knowing where they are. Mark Sanchez drops back and he looks to hand off and the guy's not there, so then Sanchez tries to create something himself, ends up running into the back of his lineman. You don't ever see those types of boneheaded, stupid plays from the Patriots. And Bill is really that guy. And Gary, I remember your good buddy, Stanley John, a couple years back, we were having a conversation at the gym. And we were talking about like how, most good head coaches, he was trying to say Rex Ryan, and Rex was obviously with the Jets at that time. He's like, he's only a defensive coach. He knows nothing about offense. I said, Stan, can you name me any head coach that is really good on both sides of the ball? The only person that he could name was Belichick. I said, that's it. That's your argument right there. No coach is really that, but Belichick is that. And you can't think, even today, can you think of another coach that is really good on both sides of the ball? And you cannot tell me that Belichick doesn't have his hands in that offense, and he's not the main reason that they're successful year in, year out. Because these guys come and go. Josh McDaniels went on to be a head coach at Denver. He failed. Charlie Weiss, multiple Super Bowls, went to be on the head coach of however many college programs. He failed. Don't tell me that Belichick doesn't have so much to do with what that offense is doing.
Yeah, I honestly, I feel like he has a hand in everything when it comes to that team. And you look at like Marvin Lewis, his coordinators, like Zimmer, they have good careers. You look at guys like Romeo Cornell and Weiss, they don't have good careers after they leave Belichick. Because I truly believe that Belichick is the mastermind behind the whole team. And Kyle, like Christian pointed out, the attention to detail, just practicing splits. Belichick does it better than anyone else. He learned from a great coach himself in Bill Parcells. But I think he's even further elevated his coaching career in his game because it's the details. It's the little things that separate Belichick. Kyle, you and I are so quick to point out Darrelle Revis. Everyone used Darrelle Revis as lining up on the team's number one wide receiver. And in his youth, in his heyday, that worked because Darrelle Revis was not only he's intelligent, smart, and he at the time he was very athletic football player. But Belichick saw something in Darrelle Revis that maybe Rex Ryan and I don't know who the guy at Tampa didn't see, or even Todd Bowles hasn't seen, and said, hey, listen, he's losing a step or two. Let's put him on the number 2 and we'll just bracket the number 1 wide receiver with a corner and a safety. Belichick is a genius. He is an absolute genius when it comes to football. He has his PhD in coaching football. So, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Hey, Christian, I know your time's valuable. We're going to let you go. Before you go, can you give us one of those, all right?
All right, guys. Thanks for having me.
Take care, Christian. That is his way of signing off PFW in progress. All right, so let's get on and... What's that, Gary?
he's going to have to do something new for our show. We can't use the same thing as BFW in Progress.
Yeah, I guess, but I guess you don't want to change a man. You know, he is what he is. You know, let him be comfortable.
That's true.
All right, and let's get on your good buddy and my good buddy, Kyle Fahey, for the next 20 or so minutes that we're taking these phone calls. Kyle Fahey, what's going on, man?
Crippling depression currently.
You seemed quite disturbed from those tweets that I was sending out. You're already on the Geno bandwagon. I saw you making Geno Instagram images and saying, you know, start Geno already. So please, tell us why.
Well, let's just be clear. For Geno to come in my mind, it's going to have to be a really another bad game for Fitz. But also the way I'm looking at it, like the past 4 games we've played, past 3 or 4, whatever it is, he's thrown like 10 interceptions. That's not good. And I'm counting the Buffalo game from last year. All right, so his performance over these past couple games has not been good at all. And it's not worth $12 million. I thought we overpaid him in the first place. I was made fun of on Twitter because I wanted to give him $7 million. And honestly, I probably would have been laughed out of the office as I was Mike McCagnon talking to Fitzpatrick's agent. I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head, but Fitzpatrick is not performing well. And
Jimmy Sexton.
Jimmy Sexton, thank you. If you look at next year's free agency class, because Ryan Fitzpatrick and Geno Smith are both free agents at the end of this year, you look at next year's free agency class regarding quarterbacks, probably the best one is Kirk Cousins. You know, not, you know, hopefully nobody major, or actually hopefully for us, somebody major gets cut, but as of right now, it's Kirk Cousins. I don't know about you guys. I'm not comfortable with Kirk Cousins. Washington wasn't comfortable with Kirk Cousins. That's why they didn't sign him to that big contract. Then you look at the draft. The draft is not any better. I mean, you got a bunch of guys who are very talented. A couple of them are injury prone, and honestly, I don't think they can get us to where we want to be by the time we have to have it. Meaning, you know, we have a window. I obviously can see that, and it doesn't look like Fitzpatrick's going to bring us there. So if Fitzpatrick just keeps doing what he's doing, why not put in Geno or Bryce or Hack? Because I didn't have us making the playoffs to begin the year anyway, all right? And now we're losing to this Kansas City team in such fashion. I expected us to lose, or I shouldn't expect our team to lose, but I did. You know, that's always the thing. You know, they're just a better team. You know, the crowd's into it. 6 interceptions. And I'm pretty sure Edward Groh said there was at least 12 interceptable passes. I know for a fact on that one play towards the end of the corner where he ended the second half in the third quarter where he tried to do a little bubble screen to Forte where it hit the back of Clady's helmet. God forbid that ball didn't hit Clady's helmet. There was a defensive lineman coming out of God knows where going for a pick six. He would have been to the house. There's no way Fitz is stopping that dude. His play is unacceptable, and if he keeps playing like that, we're not making the playoffs. I don't think we're making the playoffs at his best anyway because we've already lost too many teams that are in the wild card hunt. You know, football changes every week, but this is what you have to realize. He's not helping us. Why not start reading the guy for next year? Because maybe, you know, next year when we don't have a quarterback, because both Fitz and Geno are gone, because I hope we're not re-signing Fitz based off of that performance. I mean, we've seen his highs and lows, and it's still not getting us anywhere. You know, I'm honestly in favor of probably putting out Geno or Bryce at this point. The other problem I have with Geno is he's going to want big money if he does good. He's the free agent next year, too. So the Jets are in a terrible situation.
But isn't that a problem that you want to have? If you want your quarterback to play well.
Well,
come on.
Yeah, I know. That's definitely a problem you want to have where you're in a situation where you have to pay him, but we don't have money to pay him next year. That's what a lot of fans aren't realizing. But, you know, McCagnon right now is going to have to find an answer. And I don't know where it is. It's not in free agency, and it's not in the draft class. And honestly, I don't believe it's anybody that we have in the system right now. I'm not that comfortable in Bryce Petty. I wouldn't say that he doesn't have a future. I don't know if he has a future with the Jets just based off what I've seen in preseason. He definitely has improved, but it's just not enough to get it done. And then Christian Hackenberg, you can't expect anything out of him. He's literally relearning how to play the quarterback position, which is sad as your second-round draft pick. So the Jets are in a terrible situation. We have so much talent. and it just seems that the quarterback continues to let us down, which has been the case for the past, 50 years? 48, something like that. It's just horrendous, and I don't know how to solve it.
Gary, your thoughts?
I don't know, man. Kyle Fahey, by the sounds of him last week, you thought he won the Super Bowl. I mean, jeez. I'm not.
That was
what a contradiction from this week. It's pretty funny. I'm getting a good kick out of it. You know, great as the lowest QB in Pro Football Focus history, Ryan Fitzpatrick won that award. And let me tell you something. I'm just gonna name off a few names. And listen, Kyle Fahey, I'm gonna give it to you straight, man, because you like to waste my time on Twitter and tag me and stuff while I'm at work. Bottom line is this: is that good teams, great teams, they don't get excited when they beat mediocre teams or decent teams. They get excited when they beat playoff teams. So if you think beating the Bills is a good sign for your team, boy, you have low standards for your Jets. You know,
I consider the Bills one of the better teams in the NFL.
Beat the Cincinnati Bengals, a playoff team from last year. Beat the Kansas City Chiefs.
We definitely should have.
No, you shouldn't have. You lost. And let me tell you something. The reason why you lost is I'm going to give you a few names real quick. Vontez Burfict, Tyler Eifert, William Jackson,
all out.
Doquez Denard, and there's also two other guys I'm missing that weren't in that game. You had those guys dead to rights. You still couldn't finish the job. Here's another one.
Yep.
No Jamal Charles. No Justin Houston. Their two guards were missing. This D-line that's supposed to be wreaking havoc, guess what? They didn't get to the quarterback.
Yep.
Okay, and here we go. Beat the teams that are in the playoffs. This is what I'm telling you about the Jets. They're not beating teams in the playoffs. They're beating mediocre teams. They're beating teams they're supposed to beat. Beat the teams in the playoffs. Your team is not a serious team. And listen, we're talking about you and Ben want to point out last week to me about Todd Bowles being a better coach than Rex Ryan. Todd Bowles is such a great coach. Oh, let's line Calvin Pryor up one-on-one against Travis Kelce. That's a smart move. This mastermind defensive coordinator. What happened? He got smoked on multiple routes. So if Todd Bowles is such a great coach and he's such a defensive mastermind, looks like he's still in elementary school as far as defensive coaching goes. So, listen, you want to poke fun. There's a lot of things I could poke fun about the Jets. They're an incomplete team on my grading chart. So at the end of the day, if you look at their first three games, Kyle, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Buffalo Bills were missing 15 starters in combined. And the Jets, guess what, were missing 1.5. Jordan Jenkins came back last week. Breno Giacomini is still out. So the Jets are at full strength, and they're having a hard time competing against playoff teams, not even being in the same realm as them. So I'm not sold on the Jets. I'm certainly not sold with them when Ryan Fitzpatrick's the quarterback. This team's got a long way to go, and the sad part about it is that they got the wrong ponies. They got the guys who are at the latter part of their career. You're not going to get too many good games. Kyle, do you realize that Brandon Marshall's on pace for 853 yards receiving? Eric Decker, 792. Those are big drop-offs from last season. So this offense is taking a dip.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a shock to me. Teams are figuring out how the Jets want to play in the red zone. They already know that Fitzpatrick goes with the predetermined reads, and teams are sniffing out those plays. Things that worked last year, those shovel passes that worked last year, they're not working this year. You know, throwing a fade to Brandon Marshall, teams aren't going to leave him one-on-one. Kansas City bracketed him. That's the smart thing to do. Make the Jets go elsewhere. So that stuff, it's not working where it was last year. Fahey, really quick, I'm going to give you like a minute or two to respond, and then we got to move on to the callers because we only got a little bit more time for calls.
Yeah, you know, like I said, and I said it multiple times on this show when we did our season predictions, I didn't expect the Jets to make the playoffs this year. Like Gary said, we were going to beat teams that were mediocre that we should have beat, and we weren't going to beat teams. Well, I think we will beat the Patriots, but we weren't going to beat teams like the Chiefs. I thought we were going to beat the Bengals, that obviously did not happen. We should beat playoff teams or playoff teams when they're healthy, like the Colts. These are just teams that I don't know if we can beat if Fitzpatrick keeps playing like this. And Gary, you're absolutely right. Todd Bowles continues to look like an idiot. This is something he should be able to fix. It's not hard to put together. Like you guys said earlier, the whole Jets Twitter has figured out how to fix Darrelle Revis, and it should work. There's no reason it shouldn't work, right? You put him on the number 2, and I believe you guys used the term bracketing for the number 1 guy. I believe that's when you put 2 guys on the number 1. Correct me if I'm wrong there. That's just not hard to figure out. And Calvin Pryor, he's a good player. Travis Kelce's got like a solid 3 inches on him, probably even more. Calvin Pryor isn't a big guy. I mean, there's no reason he should be on him. That's just maddening in my mind. And, the only guy who I think really should be covering, Tyler Eifert is John Lee, and he's still short. I just think he should be on him for speed, because I think he's one of the only guys on defense that can honestly keep up with Tyler Eifert and be kind of physical with him.
Yeah, and the speed difference between Lee and Pryor is night and day. I mean, Calvin Pryor is like a 4.65 guy versus Darren Lee, who's like a 4.47 guy. So it's a big difference.
Yeah, and that's sad to me, all right? Your middle linebacker / outside linebacker should not be faster, all right, than your starting safety. That's just pitiful in my mind.
Yeah. Fahey, we got to move on. Thank you so much for the call.
Real quick, Kyle, real quick. Kyle Fahey, and listen, you try to call me out saying I'm a Jets hater. I'm not a Jets hater. You want me to give the Jets the respect, just like I want you to give the Bills respect, then beat a playoff team, and then we'll talk. Or like I'm saying, I'm not a Jets hater. I want to see the Jets do something. I'm a realist. You guys were poking fun at me about Rex Ryan. Well, guess what? I lived through Ryan Fitzpatrick and Chan Gailey, and I can tell you this right now. They were no good in Buffalo. So you want to tell me Rex Ryan's no good? I'm coming back at you and saying Chan Gailey called a terrible game, no running in the red zone, running in the red zone. And that's typical Chan Gailey. He lives by the pass, and he'll die by the pass.
Hey, Gary, did you have a Fitzpatrick jersey?
Did I have a Fitzpatrick jersey? Yes, I did.
How about that? Hey, Fahey, take care. Nice talking to you.
Thanks, guys, for having me on.
And that is Kyle Fahey of the Jet Take. Runs a fun Jets podcast with his co-host, Ben Bluffington.
He does.
And now it is time for a segment of the show which is really fun, and we hope that we can have this segment more often. And it is none other than...
Are you loyal to your team? 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 This team has taken me through my cancer and all my friggin' eye surgeries.
Wow.
And that's the bottom line. They keep me alive every day. And you know my personal story, Bob. So this story means diddly squat. Stay loyal to the Patriots. And that's all I get to say, Bob. I love you. I'm going to send you a personal message. And hopefully I'll see you in Phoenix.
Not only do we have Nick Baby Love on the line, but we also have our father, Gary Smith Sr. on the line. This is old school time. How's it going, gentlemen?
Gary, how you doing?
Hey, what's up? How about them Chiefs?
The Chiefs?
Man, I'll tell you, that is a rocking stadium. Great fans. You know what? Them fans are number one. First time I've been there in 40 years, and that stadium rocks. And it's a fan-friendly stadium, and they got the greatest people in the world. Yeah!
Are you joking with me? Are you serious? You went to the game, Gary?
Yes. I flew out there. My wife was a gift, an anniversary gift for my 3 sons. So we flew out there Friday night, and we stayed 5 days. We flew back Monday evening.
And how about the beef and steak? I'm sure you went.
Number one. The best ribs, best steak I ever had.
Isn't it unbelievable? It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, a great town, you know, one of those Midwest towns that's just a beautiful place to be, you know.
It's a nice, clean city. I swear to God, there's hardly any traffic. The sidewalks are clean. The people are friendly. Free. You park in a parking deck, and it's free. No money. No money to park in a parking deck.
So,
it's amazing.
Dad, this begs me to ask the question then. Since we were young kids, you've always talked about moving to a more southern area or a different area, New Jersey, very expensive to live. Would you ever live in the Kansas City, Missouri area?
You know what, Mom? I got Mom talking about that, believe it or not.
Oh, wow. Well,
she got to say, wow, this is a nice place to live. And it really is. The only thing that would keep me from maybe moving there, occasionally they get tornadoes. That's the only thing. The weather is not the greatest in certain parts of the year.
But it's your typical town out there. It's just a different style, different class of people, and just a lot of less of the rumble, in the jungle that we have in New York, Boston.
Oh man.
My case, Miami.
If you know what? Nobody was in a hurry. The traffic flows out there. You could be on 5 different highways in 20 minutes, and the traffic moves. There's no traffic backup. The highways are nice. The streets are clean. The sidewalks are clean. It's a beautiful. I mean, it ain't super big. It only has like 500,000 people in Kansas City, but it's nice.
Hey,
the game. As far as the game, right now our defense won it. The offense, Mom was saying, well, how come you look kind of sad when the offense comes on the field? The offense to me was very mediocre. The defense won the game.
Mm-hmm. Dad, you gotta give praise though. That offense was missing Jamal Charles and both their right and left guard for that game.
That's true.
But I got a question. And you all know I'm a Jamal Charles fan. He's from the University of Texas. Actually, you guys got two Chiefs players that are from the University of Texas, and both those Chiefs players are very good. Derek Johnson, who also had the pick 6 in this game, he was playing out of his mind. But you have to ask the question, at this point of his career, is Spencer Ware better than Jamal Charles now? Spencer Ware was good, man. I know he had a fumble that went for a touchback, but that was kind of a fluky thing.
You know what? When that happened at the stadium, that was on the other end of where I was sitting, and I thought it was a touchdown. Next thing you know, they're reviewing the play, and the next thing you know, the Jets got the ball on the 20-30. Half of the people that were around me didn't know what the heck happened. We didn't realize it was a fumble. And but yeah, you're right. Ware is a good player. He's not as fast as a Jamal Charles, but he's a good player. And like Harry said, we were missing 2 out of our 5 starting offensive linemen. And but I just don't. I wish Alex Smith had a gun for an arm, which he don't.
But But Andy Reid doesn't want that though. Andy Reid was willing to go give up those 2 second-round picks, not even a question in his mind, because, hey, listen, I'm a West Coast type of guy, traditional West Coast guy. We went off 3 5-step drops, quick rhythm passing. I want a guy who's going to be safe with the ball, accurate with the ball, and Alex Smith is that. Every now and then, once in a very blue moon, we'll test him deep. And Alex Smith did do that. Those passes were on the money. Good coverage from the Jets rookie corner, Justin Burris. It was like literally right on the money. It was just a matter of the Chiefs guy, could he make the play and could he not? And he didn't come up with the big downfield passes, but I say those passes from Alex Smith were pretty good. I think you have to be happy with Alex Smith's play. Hey, let's move on. Nick Baby Love, let's contrast that to the quarterback play of the New England Patriots. What have you thought of Jimmy, and what have you thought of Jacoby Brissett?
Well, putting that aside for 2 seconds, Dad, I just have to ask you, because you know how much I revere Joe Namath, and I'm totally with Joe. I'm totally with Mike Ditka on this BS with kneeling for the flag and all that. I think you can do things a lot of other ways. Between my family, yours, everybody, we fight for the flag, and I just can't. It makes me throw up. I can't stand anybody that's going to disrespect the flag. Senior, Gary, what do you think?
Well, my grandfather fought in both World Wars, 1 and 2.
I read my case.
What's that?
I rest my case. I knew you were going to say something. Go ahead.
Right. I mean, when my grandfather already fought in one World War, went back the day after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. At that time, he was married with 7 kids, and he re-enlisted at 42 years old, and he went back in the Navy the day after Pearl Harbor. So, you know, it hurts me to see what's happening now.
Well, you know, like I said, I side with, you know, old school guys like Mike Dichter, and like I said, I Joe Namath, you know, with his all the surgeries he's done, and he's, you know, free of alcoholism now, and he's still alive, and you know, I just revere him, and you know, I appreciate your opinion because, you know, it's there's too much political correctness, and I guess that's why you have elections. So, you know, I can almost not get into the football season. I'm going to answer the question, but I cannot not almost get into it until after November 8th. You know what I mean? I think everybody knows who I'm for. So, you know, let the best person win, and we'll see who the new president is on the 8th of November. Period.
Hey Nick and my dad, I gotta tell you something. This past week, I burned a number 7 jersey, but it wasn't Colin Kaepernick's jersey. I burned Doug Flutie's Bills jersey this past week.
Why?
In hopes of breaking the Doug Flutie curse, because since we benched Doug Flutie during those playoffs in '99, we have not been back since to the playoffs. So now it's bestowed upon the Bills fans the Flutie curse. So what I was hoping, by burning his jersey, we'd pick up a win. And sure enough, by me burning his jersey, the Bills trounced the Arizona Cardinals.
Well, look, the Bills got a good team. And just to answer the questions for everybody, as far as Jimmy Garoppolo and I happen to have met, and you know, I'm a big backer of high school sports in Florida because of who I am, and a booster at Dillard High, a very famous school like Crenshaw in L.A. that has had 15 pro athletes. The most famous one is Isaac Bruce, played for St. Louis Rams. And I watched him play in high school. He's just an incredible ball player, 6'4", 235. Imagine if you had Bill Parcells since you were in the 8th grade, and then you got Belichick, and then you perform like that. So I'm totally for Jacoby Brissett, and they got him locked for 5 years. He's the answer after Brady retires. And as far as the other kid, if he's going to go cheap, you know, obviously, look, I respect Jimmy G. He's done good too. And I want to thank somebody. I already tweeted out like crazy, thank you, Roger Goodell, because we would have never found out. We got 2 quarterbacks. I bet you the Jets would give up a first-round pick in 5 seconds for Jimmy G. You know what I mean? Et cetera, et cetera. So, but Jimmy G may ask for too much money, and we may have to trade him for a first-round pick or whatever amount of draft choices. And you already know what's going to happen when time comes back against Cleveland. Hey, look, every game's tough to win any game. You know what I mean, out here. But I already know that Brady's going to be in a rage because I hear it from everybody. You know, I'm inside with the guys in New England, you know, especially the guy that calls the game. And it's just incredible. My cell phone's ringing. I'm going to call you right back. I'm on a famous radio show, AFC East Brothers. That's my daughter calling from L.A. You see how I did that quick? You know what I mean? That's it. Hey, you got to take care of your kids. So I you know, before I get off and all that, I just want to give hope to I mean, that last kid had me depressed. The Jets got a good team. They're going to give, you know, these division games are tough. I went off today. If everybody thinks Buffalo's going to be easy to beat Sunday, they lost their mind. And then we're going to play the Jets twice. So, you know, the division games are tough. So if I was the Jets, I wouldn't give up hope. Look, they're going to make a lot of adjustments. but all the teams do, you know. And I just think they still get a shot. The Dolphins, it's still the same thing. If we had Marino, we'd be 3-0. Well, they don't have Marino. The Jets don't have Joe Namath. Buffalo doesn't have Bill Kelly. So, thank you, Roger Goodell, for, putting Brady on the sideline so he can go all over the place, lay out naked, I guess, in Italy, whatever, eat the pasta. I guess the paparazzi caught him. But, I want everybody to, just chill out. There's time enough in these, it's just like to Gary Jr., what do you think? It's not that I'm rooting for Buffalo, but what do you think will happen if Buffalo upsets New England on Sunday?
Well, I think my jersey comes back into play. No, if I'm really being serious, it changes the whole outcome of the season. The look of the season is more positive. In fact, we hit a stretch of games where you're looking at L.A., San Francisco, Miami, Cleveland. There's a bunch of our schedule starts to get really soft in the middle. So, this could spark something.
Right, and that's why I'm terrified about the game. All these people, it's a win. These are the idiots that don't study the stuff. And, Dad knows, like back in the day, that's why we're both still excited. We love talking about the American Football Conference because you know what? They would have never merged unless, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dad, and I'm saying I love you to Dad, so hopefully you guys are saying it every day. Wasn't the play in the AFL, the old AFL, just as good or better than the AFL, Dad?
You know what? Well, going back to the AFL, the Jets put the AFL on the map when they beat the Colts, and then when we beat Minnesota a year later, that made it even better, and it equaled the whole thing. It made everything equal. They looked down on us, the NFL did, for years at the AFL, until the Jets won and the Chiefs did it the next year against the Vikings, and everything was equal after that.
Remember those Chiefs and Raiders games, how fun they were? They were biting each other, doing all kinds of... Oh, man, that was a blast.
Well, how about when Ben Davidson did the Len Dawson and then Otis Taylor jumped in? Remember that?
Yes, when his mustache was so long, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
He had that first handlebar mustache, but we could go on. We could go on all day. I mean,
hey, listen.
I want to ask Kyle a question.
Go ahead.
What does he think about it? What does he think about his new tight end?
I really don't know all that much about him. He's a big dude. I saw him have a couple of nice highlight reel catches. He can't be any worse than what we have, especially from a receiving standpoint, but I'm not expecting huge things. I'm really not at all. So, some Jets fans say, we finally have a tight end. Pump the brakes a little bit. That's my opinion on that. But anyway, Nick Baby Love, thank you so much for calling. Keep fighting the good battle. And we love you too, and we also dearly love our father. So both you guys, thanks a bunch. It was fun having that throwback moment. So,
hey, listen,
thanks a lot, guys.
Dad, say hello to your wife, and it's all good. Yeah, I'm jealous. I know she's going to cook that pasta and lasagna for you. So maybe one day I can invite myself over.
You got it. If you're in Jersey, you come right over to my house.
Hey, that sounds like a plan. All right, guys, I'll talk to you next week.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
That was good stuff, Kyle.
Yeah.
All right, Kyle, well, I'm going to get into some I'm going to talk a little bit more about that Kansas City game, and then we'll get into the Bills game, and then finally we'll get into predictions. We talked already about the Patriots. We talked about the Dolphins. And then after that, we'll see what's up for this week. We got a big game with Miami coming up. And this could be a turning point for Miami as well. We talked about the Bills having a turning point. This Thursday night game has a lot riding on for Tannehill and Gase and company. But either way, I got to give my insider about the Bills' perspective, because I know Ryan Fitzpatrick, I know Chan Gailey. I got to say that, first of all, Chan Gailey called an awful game, and he does this once in a while. And I always said that he lives by the pass and he'll die by the pass. And you're down the red zone. You got Matt Forte. Matt Forte was effective last week against Buffalo in short yardage situations in running the ball. And I know it has been pointed out to Todd Bowles and company about, hey, you're overextending Matt Forte. He's 31 years old. He shouldn't be getting this much carries this early in the season. You're gonna wear his legs off. And I think that was in the back of Bowles' mind this whole week. What the media was saying, what fans were saying, even though Bowles put on a good poker face and said, "Nah, we're not really worried about his workload. He'll be all right." I think that it definitely had effect on the young head coach. So, with that being said, you saw this week his touches were real limited. Not only that, but the Jets were playing from behind this whole game against the Chiefs. So when you do that, you kind of take away the run. You're forcing Fitzpatrick to basically take the ball in his court and try to make something happen with his arm. And I said this for years. Ryan Fitzpatrick's not that quarterback. He's not that guy that's going to make miraculous comebacks week in and week out. He's not the guy that you could just throw the team on his back and he's going to be able to drive the ball for you. The Jets and the Bills are going to have to win very similar this whole year. They have to get up early on a team and kind of hold them off and then control the clock. We saw the Jets do that last week against Buffalo. They did an excellent job of doing that. But make a long and the short is Ryan Fitzpatrick is who he is. He's not going to change. I mean, last week against the Bills, he could throw a baseball into a mason jar, those tight windows he had. This week, he was throwing those 50-50 balls again, but you know what? They favored the defensive backs, especially a stingy secondary like Kansas City's. Marcus Peters, say what you want. He's a feast or famine type of corner. He gambles a lot. But when the ball's in the air, it's just as much his as it is Brandon Marshall's or Eric Decker's or Quincy Enunwa's. And that's the beautiful thing about a corner like Marcus Peters. He reminds me a lot of Charles Woodson. Charles Woodson was a very opportunistic cornerback when he played the position. He loved picking up the ball, and he was more like a wide receiver when that ball was in the air. But I'm going to say this right now. Todd Bowles still needs to grow up. He needs to mature as a coach. I see a lot of flaws. And Kyle, we're also seeing he kind of lost his top at the post-press conference, using the shit word. So everything that all these Jets fans hated about Rex Ryan, Todd Bowles kind of lost his cool for a little bit. It's not boasting well right now as far as his reputation goes. I do believe that he is an even keel coach for the most part, but he's showing a lot of inabilities, and I think that he's making poor choices with his personnel. And I pointed to the Travis Kelce because I saw that matchup get exploited time in and time out when I was watching that Jet game. You cannot put Calvin Pryor, a much smaller guy who's known for being more of a box safety. He was not really known going back to his days at Louisville as a cover safety, not like an Earl Thomas or an Eric Berry. He was more known as the Cam Chancellor, that type of safety, the Roman Harper, if you will. He was never known as the guy that you could just...
Without the size, by the way.
Right, exactly. So to have him line up one-on-one against a 6'6" freight train, and Travis Kelce, when he gets that ball in his hair, he's like a gazelle. He saw him pull away from Pryor real fast. And, Pryor didn't even get his hands on the line with him. To think that was going to be right, he did that. It wasn't like, Kyle, he saw it happen one time. It was multiple times you saw Pryor was on Kelce, almost like that was his assignment. And that was troublesome. If I was a Jets fan, I would be like, well, wait a minute. Can you see that Travis Kelce's clearly beating this guy? The big 42-yard gain would have been the icing on the cake for me. I mean, the early touchdown in the first quarter, same thing. That was Pryor's assignment right there. It just was not a good game for him. Wasn't a good game for Todd Bowles. Wasn't a good game for Chan Gailey. The Jets team got out-coached that game.
You know what really chaps my butt off about the whole Calvin Pryor thing, and we've said this before, and admittedly, I am not the hugest Calvin Pryor fan, is that, he talks a decent amount. He talks a big game. And every now and then he can back it up. But one thing that he said during the week is, Travis Kelce's not a very fast tight end. Well, let me tell you what, Calvin Pryor. Travis Kelce got the ball. You were running stride for stride with him, and he ran away from you. Travis Kelce's running with the ball, trying to avoid defenders. Naturally, it's easy for the defender to catch up in those situations. Yet Kelce pulled away convincingly from Pryor. So if Travis Kelce's not fast, then what does that tell you about Calvin Pryor? He's dirt slow for a safety. And the 40-yard dash, as I said before, I said he was a 4.6 guy. Well, close enough. He's a 4.58 guy. That's slow. You pull up his numbers on Mock Draftable, his spider graph is super small. He's 22th percentile broad jump, 32 percentile vertical jump, 40-yard dash 47th percentile. Height 13th percentile. Dude is really, really small. You brought up, he's like a Cam Chancellor type of player. Well, Cam Chancellor's 6'4", 235. Calvin Pryor's 5'11", 207 are his combine numbers. So, listen, Calvin Pryor, if you're going to talk the talk, walk the walk. But sometimes I see you doing the talk and not backing it up. So that's my call out to you, Calvin Pryor. I like some things. I don't dislike the player. I think he's an okay player, but he is what he is. These, Jets fans that are saying, he's a safety that can do all these things. No, he's not. He's a very limited player, and he's a player that when you think about players that you would let walk in free agency, that you potentially would not give a second contract to, I think it would be this guy. It's not that he's a horrible player. It's not that he's a player that you don't want on your team. But when you think about what type of money you'll have to potentially give to this guy, I wouldn't want to do that. At least not at this point in time. You have to pick your battles. You're going to want to resign a Leonard Williams. If he can stay clean, you'd probably want to resign Sheldon Richardson, but that might not be so feasible because you got already so much money invested in the defensive line. You got to pick your battles. And Calvin Pryor, to me, just not a huge fan, but I hope that the coaching staff continue to use him in a way that suits him best, and it's not going man coverage on Travis Kelce. That's for damn sure. But, Gary, you want to talk about questioning Todd Bowles? I have to agree. I said yesterday I was on a tweeting rampage on Sunday. Some people are probably wondering, man, I've never seen Kyle this angry before on Twitter. And I have my rants every now and then, but man, oh man, do I hate when I'm right. Sometimes I like when I'm right, but in this instance, I was not. And that is about Jalen Marshall. And Gary, you know this. You know this because I've been saying it since the summer. In our on-air conversations as well as our off-air conversations. Jet Nation Radio, when I co-hosted with that, they know my stance. The Jet Take, they know my stance as well. Jalen Marshall is a liability out there. Criticize Jeremy Curley all you want. He's playing some reps out in San Francisco. But the dude, at least I could trust him to go back there, do a fair catch, and trust him not to fumble the ball.
Yeah.
Jalen Marshall, what's that, Gary?
Kyle, for an outsider's perspective, he kind of reminds me of someone like a Greg Little, who Bills fans are familiar with. He'll make a big play every once in a while, but the amount of bad plays he makes totally outweigh whatever good he does. He had an excellent kick return in the beginning of the game, and that was completely overshadowed by the rest of the game that happened with him.
He could have had 6 or 7 kick returns like that, and that one big blunder that he had, those kick returns would not have outweighed that. And that's what I said to Ben Blessington last week. And Ben tried to play it off, we had 2 nice catches. I don't care. You cannot fumble balls like that in your own territory. And he did it in back-to-back weeks. And not only did he fumble those balls, but they went for touchdowns the other way. And I'll go out and I'll say this right now. And I could be wrong about this, But the only reason I'll be wrong about it is if the Jets are too stubborn and they keep playing him and he just gets some garbage time touchdown. Jalen Marshall probably has 2 more touchdowns that he gave to the other team than he will ever score in his pro career. Put me on the record for that.
Wow.
Book that. I hope that I'm wrong, but that's what I think. The dude sucks. Don't tell me about his athletic ability and his potential. Go and pull up his numbers. There's a reason he went undrafted. He's a high-character kid. You know, he's supposedly, the only reason I think that he still plays is because he knows the playbook surprisingly well for a rookie. He's a high-character guy. He played some quarterback. You can do some things with him. But there's a reason he went undrafted. It's not because he has character issues, off-the-field concerns. It's because he's small and he sucks. He can't catch the ball. He's not fast. He's not even super quick. He's got an okay 3-cone drill, but it's a little bit above average, if that. That's the only thing. So to me, guy can't catch the ball. And it wasn't just the drop fumbles either. He also dropped yet another pass. I cannot understand why this guy is still getting reps out there, and that falls on coaching. It falls on coaching. Adam Gase benched Jawan James because Jawan James was sucking. Jawan James is a first-round pick. Who is your alternative outside of Jawan James? Who? But Jalen Marshall, you got Robbie Anderson. You put Robbie Anderson for one play, what does he do? He catches a 30, 40-yard pass downfield, and if it fits through a better ball, that goes for a touchdown. You're playing Jalen Bum Marshall over Robbie Anderson? What is wrong with you? That is on the coaches.
Yeah. Well, I mean, good news for Jets fans is I think a few more weeks Devin Smith will get in the mix. So I don't know if we will be seeing much more of Jalen Marshall, but there's just not enough people to throw in the lineup if Smith's back there. But I don't know. But I'm not the biggest Smith fan. I think the jury's still out on him. I still think he's a watered-down Mike Wallace. So with that being said, the Jets have a lot of things to correct, but the main thing to me, Kyle, is coaching. I really think that they are flawed by their coaching, and you can't be a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde team, especially week in and week out. I mean, we saw this last year from the Jets. They would throw in a tremendous performance against their New England Patriots, and then go out a couple weeks later, and then, they play the Eagles and they lay an egg. They're just an inconsistent team. Quarterback, coaching, all the way up and down, whatever you want to name it, the Jets they're not a playoff caliber team because of the inconsistencies. And that goes with the coaching, it goes with the quarterback, it goes with several other plays. Drops by Jalen Marshall, drops by Brandon Marshall. Bad cornerback play, and then here's another thing, Kyle, about the Jets. And I'm not trying to rain on the parade, but it's just one of the worst performances we've seen this season. I mean, they didn't even score a touchdown. Is their defensive line, which is their focal point of the team. Week 1, they go against one of the best offensive lines, a healthy offensive line at that, and they wreak havoc. And then, albeit they still are pretty stout against the run, they go against the Bills. They don't get any sacks. They're barely in the backfield. And then they go against the Chiefs with 2 backup guards, and same deal. They're not generating the pressure they were. I don't know if teams are scheming for it, but it just seems you got this very expensive defensive line. They should be doing more, especially when your secondary is kind of shaky like the Jets. So there's things that they need to correct up, and they need to get it fast, and it doesn't get any easier with who's coming into town. We still got to talk about the Bills, Kyle, their game against the Cardinals, and we still got to give our predictions and our analysts about these upcoming games. But, if you're a Jets fan, this week's performance is concerning, especially the way they played the following week against the Bills, or the week before against the Bills.
Yeah, obviously I have some serious questions about some of the coaching decisions. Todd Bowles, again, struggles with clock management right at the end of the second half. Why are you not calling a timeout? He seems dazed and confused, like a deer in headlights out there. What are you doing, man? Again, that's been an issue pretty much since he started being a head coach in the NFL. So that's something to me. But, I haven't seen – coaches make errors. Let's just be honest. That happens. Rex Ryan will even call himself out. The Duke Williams, Mike Wallace touchdown week 1. Rex said, that's on me. And Rex is always the guy. He'll take the blame. coaching errors happen. I haven't seen so many egregious things. Like if this pattern keeps happening week after week after week, I'm talking about specifically employing, Calvin Pryor trying to cover, this elite tight end in this certain way, or keep putting Darrelle Revis on big-time number one receivers on an island with no help over the top. If we continue to see these things and no adjustments, that'll be concerning. But we're starting to see them play Revis. He's not shadowing Jeremy Maclin. That's a smart move. So it's definitely a concern, but the biggest concern for me is quarterback play. And really, I could go on forever about the Jets, but I feel like I talk about my team too much.
Well,
and that whatever I say about Fitzpatrick is not going to be good. So it's not like I'm trying to dodge anything here. But let's talk about your Bills, and I want to talk more about the. Go ahead.
Real quick, I'm watching that game, Kyle, and then we'll get off the Jets subject. One thing I found absolutely hysterical, and I know you're a Jets fan, you wouldn't find this funny, is the Chiefs play this song, and I told Dad about it. The Red Hot Chili Peppers, Give It Away.
Yeah.
So every time they get an interception, or if they cause a fumble and they recover it, they put it, Give It Away, and they kept focusing on Todd Bowles' face every time they played that song. So I wanted to make a meme that said, Todd Bowles' least favorite song, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Give It Away. And it was so funny. They kept focusing on Todd Bowles' face throughout the whole game every time they played that song.
I didn't even notice it, man. I was so pissed. Like every time he threw a pick, I just looked down in shame, and I never turn the TV off. I never miss a play. But I would just look down at my phone and see what the reactions were on Twitter, because it's music. It is, in a sense, music to my ears when everything I've been saying over recent months comes into fruition. Because there were some Jets fans out there that, they were in denial. Oh, the Ryan Fitzpatrick game in Buffalo Week 17 was just an anomaly. He was so good the 5 weeks before that. Everyone has a bad game. And then, they started to sour on him a little bit with the whole contract situation. But then once he re-signed, oh, we got our guy back. We are now primed for the playoffs. And it's like, no, we're not, dude. And no, he's not the answer, man. And eventually, once he starts throwing all these picks, it's like, what did I tell you? Did I not tell you this? And I don't want to see it. I'm rooting for the guy. I hope I'm dead wrong, and I hope that Ryan Fitzpatrick, because I do like him as a person, I hope he can bring the Jets to a Super Bowl. But if I'm in the business of making predictions and analysis, I got to call a spade. And he sucks. And it's point blank period. There's a reason why he's went to so many different teams. There's a reason why that Ryan Fitzpatrick meme out there exists. The life cycle of Fitzpatrick, where, suck, get it, or go to a new team, fill in for the backup after someone gets hurt, play admirably, get a new contract, suck, get cut, and it starts all over again. There's a reason why this is the case. Now, I'm a history teacher, right? And we're supposed to study history. They say that history repeats itself. And certainly it does sometimes. And with Ryan Fitzpatrick, it definitely does. So, anyway, let's talk a little bit about Buffalo. Admittedly, I have not watched this game yet. The only one I didn't get a chance to really watch any of. One thing I've been doing this year, which I wasn't doing last year, is I'm making a concerted effort to watch the All-22 tape of every single game in the AFC East. And I'm a little bit behind schedule, kind of still getting into the flow of that. Luckily for me, I got 2 days off of school the next week, so I'll get all caught up and make sure that I watch all the games. But when you're doing that, naturally you get a little bit farther behind because it takes a lot more time to watch those games than to just watch, a condensed version of the game where you fast forward through it. But anyway, I'm going to rely on you to tell me a little bit about this. I know some major things, but you have honestly watched this with a closer eye than I have.
Yeah. Going into this game, Kyle, they bring up, and I really hate this, 3 weeks in a row, the Bills bring up a track record. The first week against the Baltimore Ravens, the Bills kept bringing up, Rex Ryan's opening week record. And you think to yourself, wow, he's this good opening week. Then the next week they bring up Rex Ryan's record against Ryan Fitzpatrick. And you're like, and then they bring it up again, Rex Ryan record against Carson Palmer. And you're like, will this ever stop? Would you guys stop doing this? You're putting your foot in your mouth. Stop mentioning that. But sure enough, the Bills are a desperate team. They're a hungry team right now. they came out on fire, Kyle. They were definitely a team on fire, and they looked a lot sharper. I must say that. And one thing I was very keen on and very focused on was paying attention to the offense, notably because of the firing of Greg Roman and the promotion of Anthony Lynn. And the first thing that jumped off the screen to me was the plays were getting out a heck of a lot faster. They still weren't lightning fast, but they were lining up a lot faster than normal. You know, how many Bills games I could tell you between, you know, last year and the beginning of the first 2 weeks is the Bills line up and there's 6 seconds left on the clock. So you see Tyrod Taylor and he's trying to get all his checks and he's got to snap the ball or they get a delay of game. So that was one thing that was really encouraging. Another thing was encouraging that Anthony Lynn made a concerted effort to really simplify it and also stick to what works best. Just play football. And he also made a concerted effort to getting the ball in playmakers' hands, most notably LaShawn McCoy, and running what he likes to run best. And LaShawn McCoy looked explosive. He looked driven. One thing's for certain, man, like I said, that guy can make you miss in a phone book. And he was definitely doing work against a very formidable defense. A defense that the prior week only held Jameis Winston and company to 7 points. So the Bills' offense was definitely a lot sharper than normal. They didn't look confused. They weren't, you know, there was a few mishaps where I would say maybe 2 or 3 I noticed where it wasn't getting out as crisp, but they definitely looked a lot. It looked like a more well-oiled machine this week, Kyle, if I had to put it in simple terms. Now let's go over to the defensive side of the ball. Like the track record I mentioned, really, Carson Palmer is not known as a mobile quarterback. He's even less mobile than Ryan Fitzpatrick. So getting him off his spot was crucial. And I got to tell you, Kyle, that offensive line is a pretty darn good group. You know, you talk about Mikey Potty, you talk about Shipley, you talk about
Valdir. Did he even play, Valdir?
Valdir played. The big thing they were missing that game, though, was Evan Mathis. And I think he would have made a little bit of a difference. But still, Kyle Williams was getting in the backfield time in and time again. I got to tell you, Kyle Williams is still a really good defensive tackle. Really good.
Hey, I got to ask you a question. I asked you if you had a Ryan Fitzpatrick jersey earlier in the show, and you said yes, but I don't think you have a Kyle Williams jersey. What the heck, man?
Well, if you would think that, you would be wrong. I do have a Kyle Williams jersey.
Oh, you do? I've never seen you wear that.
Yeah. Well, next time we're together, I will show it out for you. It's a white jersey, so it's usually in the wash. They usually get a little stain, so you got to put them in once in a blue moon in the wash. So, yeah. With that being said, Kyle, I do have a Kyle Williams jersey, and he is an absolute wrecking ball. I mean, Kyle Williams. The defensive line just seems to be playing better when he's in there. And he played a lot of snaps. I forget what the count was, but out of all the defensive linemen, he played the most. Jerry Hughes, and once again, Lorenzo Alexander. Kyle, Lorenzo Alexander was a guy we brought in to just play special teams. He constantly gets pressure. I mean, the guy has a great burst off the line. He's got a low center of gravity, and he's really strong. In fact, he actually got his sack off of a bull rush, and you know, he made an excellent move after he was able to get the tackle off balance. But the big story is the Bills came out with 7 DBs. I don't know if you heard about that.
I did.
And they really confused Carson Palmer and company. They expected kind of what Ryan Fitzpatrick was doing to the Bills. I think Rex Ryan knew that Bruce Arians was going to look at that jet tape and say, all right, we can get the Bills with the quick passing game. 50-50 balls. We know we got Floyd. We know we got the 2 Browns. We know we got Fitzgerald. And we got Jermaine Gresham. We could beat them on this. And I think the Bills really came out prepared. Now, they did a calculated gamble. If you look at the drive chart, you see that, I forget how many drives, but it's like punt, 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 punt from the Arizona Cardinals. And really, they had no chance to even get David Johnson going because their passing game was not working. So then they start relying on their run a little bit later on in the game. But by then, the Bills already had a really comfortable lead. They were able to drive down at will on the Arizona Cardinals. They had a big special teams play by Aaron Williams that ran it back for a touchdown.
On a botched snap, right?
On a botched snap. And I really felt bad because if you look at that play, I think Nick O'Leary creamed the holder, if I'm not mistaken.
Baby hands.
He threw an excellent block on that. But either way, to make a long story short, it was all three phases: special teams, offense, defense. The Bills were on fire. The thing that was discouraging to me, though, is once again the topic of discussion is Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor, though he was really, he had two excellent runs. One went for a touchdown. Passing over the middle, it's an issue that the Bills have had with Tyrod Taylor. You see it time and time again. You see Charles Clay open. You see Robert Woods open. You see multiple people over the middle, and I don't know if it's because he just doesn't like throwing into the middle. I don't know if it's he's too short and he can't see over the. I don't know what it is, Kyle. But Tyrod Taylor is still not a complete product. He's a good quarterback, but the one thing I could say about his game that really needs to improve and drastically is his ability to use the middle of the field. He can use the sidelines well. He can run the ball well. He plays pretty much mistake-free football as far as quarterback standards go. But he needs to be able to find his weapons in the middle of the field. And that has to change quite fast. But I can tell you this right now, when you have a LaShawn McCoy running the way he has, that really doesn't matter. And if your defense could put out a performance against a really talented team, Kyle, let's face it, that Arizona team probably has just as much weapons as the Jets, if not more, and definitely better quarterback play. So that was an impressive win. You know, you could call it as a fluke, a West Coast team coming out to the East Coast, whatever. They beat a serious Super Bowl contender from last season, and I was happy with it. You know, it was a game that you and I both called as a loss, especially after they put up 40 points against Tampa Bay, and they won that game pretty handily. You know, there was no point where Arizona would even look like they were able to mount a comeback against the Bills.
Yeah, I know that, I think it was our buddies from the Rock Pile Report, one of them tweeted out, like, is it possible that the Bills could collapse once Arizona scored like 7 or 10 straight or whatever it was, and it looked like they had a little bit of a glimmer of hope, but, that was short-lived. But, man, as Carson Palmer fell off the face of this earth, man, he was riding so high last year, and then you look at those playoff games, absolutely horrific. And the way that he started the season, he was horrible against New England. And I don't know really what happened in the Tampa Bay game. I'm assuming he played at least pretty good. But then go and toss 4 picks against the Buffalo Bills. Man, this guy has really fallen down. And you have to wonder, has he started to hit that Peyton Manning type of cliff, that Brett Favre type of cliff, where you are amazing the one season, and then once you fall, you're in free fall. You have to wonder if that's the case for him. But to what you said about, everyone's making these predictions about Rex Ryan and, how he's so good in season openers, and then, how he's so good, what was the second week? Against Ryan Fitzpatrick. Against Ryan Fitzpatrick. And then the third week, he's so good against Carson Palmer. I must say, some of the best Jets wins that I ever enjoyed came against Carson Palmer. You think about Week 17, the 2009 season, the Jets blew out the Cincinnati Bengals in the old Giant Stadium, 37-0. Just an absolute rout. Ocho Cinco said, if Revis holds me without a catch, I'll change my name or whatever. I'll change it back. Revis, sure enough, held him to without a catch. The very next week, Cincinnati's got like the blueprint. The Jets needed that win. Cincinnati didn't need that win in Week 17. They had the blueprint of how to beat the Jets, and now they got the Jets in their building. Well, sure enough, the Jets went out and convincingly beat Cincinnati by 10 points on the road. And then the very next season, the Jets beat Cincinnati on a night game on Thanksgiving. No better way than to end your Thanksgiving evening with a nice football W. And that season, too, the Jets won a lot of nail-biters. They're winning overtime games in Detroit, overtime games in Cleveland, winning a nail-biter against the Texans. So many nail-biters they won in that 2010 season. That Bengals game was not one of them. That was one of their convincing wins, if you will, in that season. So some of Rex's best wins certainly have come against Carson Palmer in games that he's looked absolutely horrible in. So that is a thing, and it continues to be a thing, and we saw that this past Sunday. Gary, I want to talk a little bit more about the Dolphins before we get into our predictions. And admittedly, we do not talk enough Dolphins and Patriots, and we're going to make a more concerted effort on the show to do that. You Dolphins fans, I know you're out there. I know you guys listen. Why don't you guys call in yourself? That's the first thing that you guys can do in order to ensure yourself some more airtime on this program. But with that being said, Gary and I are going to do more of a concerted effort to integrate more Dolphins and Patriots talk, because naturally we know that their teams, the Bills and the Jets, it's just a natural thing, and we don't want to disrupt our natural flow of the show. So things that we'll try to do is we'll try to get on Dolphins and Patriots people more often. We will try to make an effort to do that. But Gary, I want to talk a little bit about Adam Gase. We praised him. We praised him for benching Juwan James, for benching a first-round pick, when really you don't have a viable starter behind him. But can you say that in the home opener against a rookie third-round pick, who lots of people thought he should have been a seventh-round pick, Cody Kessler and Terrell Pryor kind of doing dual duties at quarterback, is it fair to say that Hugh Jackson thoroughly outcoached Adam Gase in this game?
I would say so. I mean, you're looking at a really depleted Cleveland Browns team, especially, you're talking now they're down to their third-string rookie. You're talking about no Corey Coleman, no Josh Gordon. The team was dead to rights. And, Kyle, we said that this game is going to almost be a walk for Miami. I did also mention that it wouldn't shock me if Cleveland did win this game, and they should have, really. But it was a dogfight. In fact, Cleveland was up at halftime, and I said to myself, is Miami this bad? They give us a nice glimpse week one. They battle it out with Seattle's home opener, albeit that Seattle is usually a slow starter. But at the end of the day, they can't. It just doesn't. Defensively, they seem terrible. Like I said, Jarvis Landry is a bright spot in this team. The thing that I'm most troubled about is Adam Gase is known as this quarterback whisperer. You think about Peyton Manning had his best career under Adam Gase as being the offensive coordinator. Jay Cutler had a nice little resurgence last year. Wasn't absolutely stellar, but he had a pretty decent season, especially the lack of talent that's around him. It looks like to me, though, that Ryan Tannehill has not made much of an improvement since last year with Joe Philman and Bill Lazor and and company. He just seems pretty much like the same player that we're used to, and he makes a few bonehead plays here and there. The thing that's most troubling, though, I think even more so than Tannehill, is this defense. This defense where they brought in a lot of players. And they let a lot of players go. They did a total rehaul. You're talking about Derek Shelby's gone. Olivier Vernon's gone. Jamar Taylor, who picked off Ryan Tannehill, he's on Cleveland's roster. He's gone. Brett Grimes.
By the way, they shipped him away to the Browns for a 7th-round pick. So you have to wonder. I mean, Jamar Taylor is starting for them, and he's at least being competent. Was it worth it?
Yeah, well, we're going to get even deeper. So they traded for Kiko Alonso. They signed Mario Williams. I mean, they did a complete overhaul. No Brett Grimes. They bring in a Byron Maxwell. They draft Xavier Howard from Baylor. I mean, really, they added a lot of pieces on this defense, and they're supposed to be vastly improved, especially the D-line. There was a lot of hype behind this D-line. And I might sound like the bitter Bills fan, Kyle. Mario Williams has 1 sack thus far. He's on pace for, guess what, 6 sacks. same as he had last year. So supposedly him pinning his ears back and getting after the quarterback, well, it seems like he's really doing a good job of pinning his ears back and going after the quarterback. And that's just the bitter Bills fan of me talking. Either way, the Miami Dolphins have a lot to improve on, I'm going to give Adam Gase and company a pass. This is his first season on the helm, but, man, this is a team that should have beat Cleveland convincingly with all the things that were going against Cleveland. I mean, this is not even in Cleveland Stadium. This was at Hard Rock Stadium. And they still were in a dogfight, and they should have lost that dogfight. Kyle, I always say, you can't use the word should have. If they win, they win. If they lose, they lose. Kyle, they literally missed a field goal, and Miami was able to capitalize on it.
Yeah. I mean, like I said before, a 46-yard field goal in the NFL, nice weather, those are going in about 80% of the time.
And what's the deal with Parkey?
Well, I mean, apparently they just signed him that week. I guess their kicker got hurt or whatever. I really don't know. But, shoot, man, he's bad, and there's a reason he wasn't on the NFL roster. But, I mean, let's go back to Adam Gase for a moment. You know, a lot was being said that when the Bills were struggling early midseason last year, Tyrod went down, the Bills dropped 2 straight, dropped the London game. You know, everyone was wondering, you know, is the honeymoon period with Rex Ryan over with? You know, we talked about that on our show. Shoot, we might have had a title of an episode titled, you know, is the Rex Ryan honeymoon era over, you know? And you have to ask yourself, is that the case with Adam Gase? Because let's not forget, this guy was the hottest head coaching candidate coming into this year. Everybody wanted this guy. Everybody wanted an interview. Some were shocked that he chose Miami. You know, you got this job open and that job open. You're going to choose Miami? You know, what's going on there? They have infighting with who's the true GM down there? You know, you have an owner that, you know, he's trying to maybe exert a little bit more authority than he should be. You know, Miami hasn't really won anything in recent years. Who is Ryan Tannehill? You know, you had all these questions, but regardless, Adam Gase chose Miami. But we've seen some questionable things in each of the first 3 games. You could argue playing too conservative at the end of the Seattle game. And plus, you know, that's a great defense. But the defense wasn't Miami's problem. But Adam Gase is supposed to be the offensive guy. Your offense only put up that many points, and I get it. They also had their own blunders. You know, Adam Gase has no control over whether or not Kenny Stills is going to catch that ball. But regardless, you still weren't world beaters on offense in that game. Week 2, you came out absolutely flat against the New England Patriots. There's no other way to describe it. You were flat. You weren't ready to play. You got punched in the mouth, and by the time that you regained your senses, by the time you got up off the mat, you were already down for the 10 count in that game. You know, and then you go to week 3, Hugh Jackson just outcoached him. You know, the Browns, you know, they were in that game the whole entire time. They got their turnovers. I mean, I guess I'm glad that he eventually pulled Juwan James, but there's just a little bit cause for concern that I'm starting to see from Dolphins fans. I know that some have already jumped the ledge. They've already jumped ship on Adam Gase. I'm not ready to do that. I still think he can do things for Ryan Tannehill, but listen, Miami got the win. A win is a win is a win. I get all that, but it's just cause for concern. We were criticizing Rex handily last week. We were criticizing Todd Bowles handily this week. Now it's time to criticize Adam Gase. And no, we will not criticize Bill Belichick because that would just be asinine of us.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the games. Let's go on and let's talk about... And by the way, if I'm going to give you another silver lining with the Miami Dolphins, Cam Wake is a beast. He's still killing it. He's still
a monster.
Another strip sack. Love the dude. Kind of wish that the Dolphins didn't give him a new contract and that somehow the Jets were able to nab him up because we could really use a true edge rusher. We don't have that. You know, you're talking about the D-line, Gary. I think our D-line's been solid, but the problem is you cannot rely on getting pressure from the interior. You can certainly hope to get that. You want to push the pocket. But who are those guys that are coming from the outside to collapse the pocket, to make the quarterback step up? We don't have that guy. Lorenzo Molden is not that guy. Jordan Jenkins is not that guy. That's been the Jets' problem for years, since John Abraham, period.
Yeah.
Okay. I will say this, Kyle. We're talking about older edge rushers. You know, we talked about Cameron Wake and Lorenzo Alexander. Those guys having some decent seasons. How about Dwight Freeney? I was watching him last night. That guy's still a monster, too.
That spin move is just insane, man. It's like, everyone tries to do it, but you can't do it like him. He's just one of a kind.
I know. He's an absolute beast. And you know what? He's like, same thing. Like, look at these older edge rushers. Tom Holly's another one, Kyle, and Cameron Wake. They're all kind of reduced to just strictly passing down roles. You don't see Dwight Freeney, Tom Holly, or Cameron Wake on running downs, but in passing downs, those guys come in and they're going to bring it. Those savvy vets.
Yeah, man.
But it's cool seeing these older guys, like we mentioned, Alexander, Wake. They still got a little juice in the tank as far as getting after the quarterback.
It's crazy to see. And, Dwight Freeney was a free agent for the longest this offseason.
I know. It's amazing.
And everyone wanted him. Jets fans, hey, listen, sign Dwight Freeney. They didn't do it, though. I would have loved it, man.
Me
shoot.
Too.
I know, and it's so easy to analyze things in retrospect, but if you could say to the Jets organization right now, hey, listen, Lorenzo Malden has been a disappointment. Hasn't really, excelled the way that you wanted and anticipated him to. Would you take Dwight Freeney? Would you sign him if he was still available at this point? I think the Jets organization, realizing that they are lacking that edge rusher, I think they would do it. Anyway, let's talk about Thursday Night Football. Dolphins at the Bengals. And if there is some kind of silver lining out there, it's that the Dolphins play the Bengals well. And we were just talking about Cameron Wake, Gary, and everybody likes to point to this. I think it was on Halloween. They had the wake-off safety, or instead of walk-off, like how in baseball you have a walk-off home run? Well, Cameron Wake had a safety on Andy Dalton where he absolutely crushed him in the end zone. Safety, game over in overtime. The Dolphins have played the Bengals well in recent years. Now, it's a different Dolphins team, led by Joe Philbin. Same Bengals team, at least if we're talking about the coaching staff. Marvin Lewis seems like he's been there forever. But this game is in Cincinnati. This game, it seems like they're getting Tyler Eifert back. This game, they're getting Vontaze Burfict back, the guy who leads that middle of the pack. And by the way, I think those guys, Vincent Ray and others, I think they're certainly solid inside linebackers. Mal Luga, he is what he is. But they're serviceable, but they're not perfect. It's in Cincinnati. They've been very good in Cincinnati. I know that New England went there a couple of years ago, lost. It seems like the Giants went in there and absolutely got crushed. My Jets, the last time we went to Cincinnati, we got smoked 49-9. The Bengals are a pretty good home team. Dolphins haven't really shown that they're a great road team. And the Dolphins have a huge injury report right now. Now, you might ask yourself, okay, well, that's because it's a short week of practice. Obviously, the Dolphins are going to hold a lot of guys out of practice. But regardless, we can only go off the information that we have. It was huge for the Bengals.
Yeah, and also the Bengals have a little bitter taste in their mouth. They're playing, the Super Bowl champs, the Denver Broncos, in their backyard, and this is a statement game. We talk about the injuries. Well, they got Trevor Siemian right now as their quarterback, and I know that's a good defense they went against. It's probably the best defense they're going to face all year, the Bengals, but they want to right the wrong. They're probably eager to get back on that field and make good on being a contender, especially a team that's pushing for the division. Pittsburgh just lost, and they lost by a very dominant Philadelphia Eagles team. I know Amit Das is probably smiling ear to ear. But that division...
He's already said he's buying the Wentz jersey. He's already confirmed it. And by the way, a couple weeks ago, he was so mad at the Eagles for making that trade up in the draft.
Oh, I know. It's so... That's what I'm saying. That's why... Same thing with Kyle Fay. He was praising Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now this week, he wants to start Geno Smith. Fans are funny. So, either way... that division's wide open. Let's face it. Baltimore, even though Baltimore is 3-0, no one's really going to say that Baltimore is that much better than Cincinnati and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Cincinnati Bengals are definitely going to be chomping at the bit to get after the Miami Dolphins. And I think they are going to win this game, Kyle. Like you said, not only the fact that I think they're also more talented, better coached, but they get some key players back. They get Eifert, who's one of the best red zone threats, and he's one of the top tight ends in the league. You know, we talk about Travis Kelce. You know, he's in the same breath as Travis Kelce and Jordan Reed and, dare I say, Rob Gronkowski. But he's definitely up there. And Vontaze Burfict is the man for that defense. He is the commander and chief of the Cincinnati Bengals defense. And he brings a different element than those other two linebackers, especially in the running game. He brings an intensity. So with those two names being back, I'm not really impressed with Miami's running game. How could you be this year? It's been atrocious. So they got to rely heavily on Ryan Tannehill, and that never bodes too well if you have to rely so heavily on that. I think the Bengals take this 27-17.
Yeah, I also have the Bengals winning by double digits. And we also said this, that it's very tough for teams to play on the road on Thursday Night Football. I know the Jets played admirably. Ryan Fitzpatrick's best game that he's had in quite some time happened on Thursday Night Football. He was obviously the road team. But look what happened to the Texans last week. They got smoked by a third-round rookie that basically got no reps in training camp. Probably actually would have had more reps if there wasn't the whole, Brady suspension thing. But Jacoby Brissett was totally not prepped for that game, but Bill Belichick was able to use the lack of preparation time to do creative things to throw the Houston Texans off. Anyway, they lost by the score of 27-0. It's tough playing on the road on Thursday night, no doubt about it. I just think that Cincinnati's definitely the better team. I know they're 1-2. I know that they've lost 2 straight. I know that they didn't even beat the Jets all that convincingly. But they're the better team. There's no doubt about it. And also, who's going to cover A.J. Green? Is it going to be Byron Maxwell? Is it going to be Xavier Howard? Please. Darrelle Revis got, he got taken to school by A.J. Green. These guys, you wonder what's going to happen to them. Now, obviously Miami plays a lot more zone coverage, so it's not like they're going to have a guy playing, man on him. He's going to be going deep with no safety help over the top. That's not going to happen, but still, A.J. Green can eat these guys for lunch, and I think that he's going to do that. Let's talk, you want to do Seahawks versus Jets or Bills at Patriots next?
Well, the division game we'll have to save for last, Kyle.
Okay, sounds good. So let's talk about the Jets, and I guess I didn't talk enough about Ryan Fitzpatrick's ineptitude, but not only is it 6 interceptions, not only is it the worst PFF grade that was ever given out, this guy threw interceptable passes, and for the traditional listeners of the show, you shouldn't be familiar with that term, but what that means is the ball could have very well been intercepted if the defender caught the ball. This guy threw interceptable passes on back-to-back-to-back passes. He was that bad for those stretches. It was really a horrific sight to watch. It's like watching a horror movie. Not only that, but this guy threw multiple interceptions in the red zone, in the end zone. On one play, he threw an interception, a would-be interception to Eric Berry. Eric Berry just dropped it. The very next play, he throws an interception. After that, he throws another interception in the red zone. He threw 6 interceptions. I get it. He's pressing late in the game. But this dude is not good. He works off predetermined throws. And if you want to talk about predetermined throws, the Jamar Taylor interception that he had on Ryan Tannehill in this Miami game, it's a predetermined throw. Tannehill drops back, looks straight at him, or he doesn't even, he looks for the other way for a split second, then he goes to his actual first read. And then he just unleashes the ball without really looking at the corner. The corner picks it off. Doing that can be a tricky business sometimes. Fitz does this all the time. He's a one-read quarterback. Everyone wants to say he's so smart. He went to Harvard. Yes, he is smart. He knows math. He can get a 48 on a Wonderlic test. But if you listen to my Christian Hackenberg episode, that really doesn't tell the whole story. Peyton Manning got a 28 on the Wonderlic test. When I took the Wonderlic test, I got above that. I don't know football better than Peyton Manning. Not even close. So yes, Ryan Fitzpatrick's smart with that stuff, but he's a smart quarterback on the field. He can determine things pre-snap. But once the poop hits the fan during the snap, he panics. He doesn't know how to get past that first read sometimes, and it causes him to do dangerous things. He might step up in the pocket, unleash the ball as he's getting sacked, going to the ground, throws the ball, sure enough, it gets intercepted. Just a putrid performance. Now, Gary, I said all that about Ryan Fitzpatrick. The Kansas City Chiefs run predominantly a man coverage scheme. Bob Sutton used to be, the linebackers coach when Rex Ryan was the head coach of the New York Jets. He spent a lot of time with Rex. Rex's best defenses in New York are when Bob Sutton was on the staff. Bob Sutton is now the defensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, they run a lot of man. Fitz played that bad against Kansas City, a man team who has a good defense, no doubt. But is that defense, personnel-wise, are they better than the Seattle Seahawks? No, they're not. Seattle runs a lot of zone coverage. We had Edward Gorelick on about maybe 10, 15 episodes now, and he did a piece. You can find it on TurnOnTheJets.com. Ryan Fitzpatrick's stats in context. He charted every single one of Ryan Fitzpatrick's throws. And you notice that the quarterback rating for Ryan Fitzpatrick is significantly worse when he throws against zone coverage. What does Seattle run? A lot of cover 3 and cover 1. They're a zone team. You know what they're doing. But they have such a good personnel that they don't care that you know what they're doing. Line up and beat us. Stop us if you can. Score on us if you can. That's Seattle's mindset. Fitz is going to know what they're going to do. But the reality is that he struggles against those types of defenses. And if he struggled that bad last week against Kansas City, how badly might he struggle this week? That's my question. That's my concern. I think that Seattle puts up points from their defense, whether it's getting a pick six like what happened last week, whether it's scooping up a Fitz fumble. He's had several of those this season. He had several in Buffalo. For as well as he played up in Buffalo, the dude had a couple fumbles that he was, fortunate to get back on his own, or, Kellen Davis picks it up or whatever. So I think Seattle's defense scores points in this game, and I think that is the main reason why Seattle wins. I think they're hobbled on offense. They have a horrible, terrible, god-awful offensive line, and the Jets have a good defensive line. Russell Wilson should be running for his life, and he's certainly very good at doing that. Now, can Russell Wilson run very often? He's on a sprained MCL, whatever it is. He also hurt his ankle week 1 when Sue stepped on him. He cannot move as fluidly as he used to be able to. And when you have that bad offensive line, I think it's going to be a long day for Russell Wilson in this offense. But make no mistake about it, it was a relatively long day, especially in the second half, for Alex Smith in that Kansas City offense. It's not going to be Seattle's offense that worries me. It's Seattle's defense going against Ryan Fitzpatrick and his ineptitude. And for that reason, I got the Seahawks winning this one 20-13. They're going to go from West Coast to East Coast where they're not very good, and they're going to beat the Jets. And I hope I'm wrong, but that's what I think. I picked the Jets the first 3 weeks. I'm 1-2 with them so far. Not picking them this week.
Yeah, and another thing that has to be mentioned is that for whatever reason, the tight end matchup with Travis Kelce, Jimmy Graham came alive last week, finally, for Seattle. And, make no bones about it, that guy's 6'7", and he's a weapon. He's got, broomsticks for arms. Doug Baldwin is starting to put himself in the upper echelon of wide receivers. I'm not quite there yet with him, but he's definitely a formidable weapon. The thing that concerns me, though, about Seattle is their offensive line. But that was the same concern I had last week with the Chiefs, knowing that their 2 guards were going to be gone. The Seattle Seahawks offensive line, they get healthier this week. They get their first-round pick right tackle back in the lineup. So, I share a lot of the same views as you, Kyle, as far as this game goes. I like the fact that the Jets are home, but I still think Seattle's the much better team, the better coach team. The better quarterback situation, and definitely the more
much
disciplined
better quarterback. Russell Wilson's one of my favorite players. I'm just talking, maybe not so much his personal life, especially now that all this Sierra stuff and whatnot. But I just love the way the guy plays on the field. I've been a fan since day one.
Yeah. He's a cool cat, and he's definitely a playmaker. And I think they're the better coach defense. I think they're just the better overall team, and I see the outcome pretty much the same as you do. I see it. I see them winning about 24-17, to 17. It'll be close, but a lot of those yards will come garbage time with Fitzpatrick and the team. What I am very interested to see is number 81, Quincy Newone, who's a man, getting a quick hitch and meeting Cam Chancellor in the hole. That's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, man, that is going to be awesome. Yeah, Quincy is. It's hard not to like Quincy, man. The way he plays. The dude's just constantly churning his legs. Think back to, what was it? Was it Cincinnati or I think it was the Cincinnati game. They threw him. I think they threw him a screen pass, and the defender really met him initially. And he's got one of his legs wrapped up. But Quincy, even though he cannot get free of the defender's grasp, he's still fighting forward. And even though he's got a bunch of defenders breathing down his neck, he's not going down. Now, sometimes you want the guy to go down. You don't want him to fumble there. But the dude just plays so hard, constantly turning his legs. He's going to get an extra yard or two on given plays because he plays like that. So, that's going to be really exciting to see. Now, Cam is, we think of Quincy as being a big guy. Cam's got, about 2 inches and about 10 pounds on him. Both these dudes are chiseled. Both these guys are hard-nosed guys. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, well, Cam Chancellor, keep note, even the biggest of wide receivers, you think about Demaryius Thomas, that Super Bowl matchup. He laid the wood on him. He wasn't the same player the whole game. And then you talk about even Vernon Davis, Kyle, who's a much bigger player than Quincy Enunwa. He hit him so hard one time. So it's going to be very fun to see those two collide. These two guys definitely don't shy away from contact. That's a given.
Yeah, but Quincy plays differently than both those guys. Demaryius is, he's a really big dude, 6'3", and he's like, 235? He doesn't play like that, though. Neither does Vernon Davis.
You can't say Vernon Davis doesn't play that way.
Vernon Davis is a speed guy, Gary. This guy, he ran like a 4.4 something at 200.
I get that, but I've seen Vernon Davis more than once lower his head and try to lay the boom on someone.
I want you to send me these highlight reels.
I will.
They're not sticking out in my mind.
When we played San Francisco, I remember this play clearly in my head. He laid a hit on George Wilson that was so hard. I'm telling you, he lowered his head. I will pull that clip up for you, but he doesn't shy away from contact, Vernon Davis.
Well, shoot. A broken clock is wrong twice a day. So we've seen, listen, Sean Green was supposed to be this big bowling ball of a running back, right? And in his rookie year in the playoffs, we thought he was that. He trucked Eric Weddle, one of the best safeties over recent years in the league, trucked him about 15 yards off the line of scrimmage, then ran 50 more yards or 40 more yards for a touchdown. We were like, wow, this guy's the running back of the future. So much so that the Jets cut Thomas Jones, who had 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns in that season. They cut him, said, bye-bye, thank you for your services. We're going to move on with Sean Green and LaDainian Tomlinson. We don't want to pay your contract.
All right.
What was Sean Green after that? He was nothing.
I get what you're saying, but I'm just saying that Vernon Davis is a lot more physical. He's definitely a speed freak, but he's a lot more physical, especially back in the day he was, when Cam Chancellor met him up in the hole like that. But we've seen many more instances where he meets some pretty big bruisers, especially running backs, and he usually wins those battles 90% of the time. So,
okay, I'm gonna let you start off our talk on Bills-Patriots.
Oof, I hate talking about this game, Kyle. I hate it. Just when I think the Bills have every advantage going for them, and you and I talk about this game, it just seems like it's not meant to be, and especially in Foxborough. One thing I could say is Rex Ryan has a pretty good idea of confusing young quarterbacks, but that really gets totally negated when it comes to Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick knows that. One thing, though, I do like is the same thing I liked going into last week's matchup against Arizona is kind of the element of surprise, Anthony Lynn. There's no book on this guy. You got 1 week's worth of film. Anthony Lynn can have a completely different game plan when it comes to the New England Patriots. So I think that is a huge advantage for the Buffalo Bills, and that's something I think we can exploit, especially against Bill Belichick and Matt Patricia, because I don't think they even expect to know what the Bills are going to run. But what I could say this is that, make no bones about it, Belichick and company are going to make a conscious effort to take away especially if Sammy Watkins is not playing this week, LaShawn McCoy. You could bet that number 25, you have him in fantasy, you might want to bench him this week.
Yes.
Not
might bench him, unless you got straight garbage on your bench.
You look at Hopkins, DeAndre Hopkins, on the offensive side of the ball. He's probably their best weapon for the Texans. And then you look at J.J. Watt, their best defender. Those guys were absolutely ghosts in this game the past Thursday against New England. But what encourages me is that New England's defensive line has really been getting after guys, and they've been putting good pressure on a lot of their opponents. But Kyle, I got to tell you, I'm thoroughly impressed with Cyrus Kouandjio. I don't know if you watched any of his film against the Jets, and especially his film against Chandler Jones.
Yes, I did. So I watched the first two Bills game in all 22, and I started doing it on Instagram, but I really don't have a big Instagram following yet, and it's a little bit more of a process to upload those videos to Instagram. So for the time being, I'm just going to post every image, or every video, I should say, to Twitter, which is what I've been doing recently. I still got to do the Bills' third game against the Cardinals, which just recently came out. I still got to do, the Jets' third game. But I have done the first two games, so yes, I've watched him. And here's the thing, is if you're an offensive lineman, and we're specifically talking about pass blocking, if you are not standing out, that's a good thing. And to me, I never thought, wow, who just got burned right there? Which defensive lineman, that defensive lineman just kicked an offensive lineman's butt. Which offensive lineman was that? I wasn't saying that. I wasn't seeing that with Cyrus Kouandjio. So yes, I have been impressed because I haven't seen him. When you don't see an offensive lineman blowing an assignment, that is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, to think they're missing Cordy Glenn and how well he plays on the left side as opposed to the right side, it's almost night and day. And I think about those New England games where Chandler Jones used to destroy Cordy Glenn, much like he did to Rickshaw Ferguson. It simply wasn't the case against Cyrus Kouandjio. Cyrus Kouandjio really dominated Chandler Jones, and I was thoroughly impressed. And actually, it raises a huge eyebrow in my mind. So I think that's going to be a key matchup, is this Bills offensive line, who had probably their best outing thus far this season, only 3 games in, but definitely showed well against a good defensive front. How well are they going to perform against Jabal Sheard, Chris Long, and all those big bodies that New England loves having in the middle, Malcolm Brown and company, your boy Vincent Valentine. And, I think that definitely is something I'm going to have my eyes focused on. Kyle, this game is so tough to call. I'm going to still give it to New England. And like I said, it wouldn't shock me if the Bills completely come out with a game plan that really takes New England out of their game. We've seen Rex Ryan do this to Bill Belichick. Even though he's come on the losing end, there's games where Belichick kind of doesn't have an answer for what Rex Ryan's throwing at him. And just really, Rex Ryan doesn't have the firepower to compete with Belichick. But this year's team's a little bit different. Taylor, McCoy, if Watkins is playing, you got Clay. You got a lot of weapons that prior Jets teams didn't have. But, Kyle, I know you can attest to saying that there was a few games where Rex Ryan's team was in it, just that they didn't have the ponies to compete.
Yeah, if you look at Rex's record over the last 10 games against Bill Belichick, this is Rex's record as a head coach. He's 1-9 over the last 10. That includes 2 losses last year as the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. The last victory came in 2013, Geno's rookie season, when the Jets won at MetLife, and that was even a close, controversial game. But with that being said, there have been close games on the road, where the Jets had horrible seasons. The 2014 season, Rex went 4-12. They lost by the score of, they lost twice in nail-biters, 16-17 at home in Week 16, and then earlier in the season, I think it was actually a Thursday night game, if I'm not mistaken. It was definitely a primetime game. The Jets lost by a score, I believe, 25-27, in a game where Geno actually played somewhat competent. So Rex has given Bill battles. He actually gave him one last year in New England, with Tom Brady playing, not with one of these backups playing. So although he hasn't been getting the wins, sometimes he has been giving them games. Now, there have been their fair share of blowouts. You think about the Thanksgiving butt fumble game. That was certainly a blowout. There's a couple others mixed in there. Last time Rex has won in New England was the 2010 divisional round of the playoffs. The second best Jets victory in team history. So it's been quite a while that Rex has won in New England. It's been quite a while since Rex has even beaten Belichick. 2013, went 1-1 against him. But 1-9 over the last 10. Now again, this is a Buffalo Bills team, and he's going against either Jimmy Garoppolo, who I'm not the biggest fan of, and Jacoby Brissett. Now, I don't ever feel confident picking against New England Patriots. But for some reason, I think Rex is going to win this game. I think the Bills are going to win this game. I got the Bills 24-21. Now, it seems that most people that I know that cover the Patriots, they have a feeling that it's going to be Brissett. I have a feeling that it's going to be Garoppolo. I feel that the Patriots were pushing him to play last week. Now you're coming off another 10-ish days of rest. Why would you not go with Garoppolo? I think Christian just said that he thinks it's going to be Garoppolo. Am I mistaken about that, Gary?
No, he said Garoppolo.
He said Garoppolo. Now, overall, the Bills' defense has been pretty solid this year. Those linebackers are playing out of their mind. Both the Brown brothers. Eric Turner, who uses a lot of Pro Football Focus, as well, he uses that along with his eye test. The dude knows film. He knows how to break it down. He's a former offensive coordinator. So the dude really knows a lot about football. Eric is saying, listen, the numbers, Zach Brown's numbers, saying he's playing like the best linebacker in football. Now, it's only 3 games, but it also matches up with the eye test. He was playing out of his mind. I pointed out a couple of videos on my Twitter account, which you can go see, versus the Jets game. Zach Brown was solid. Even the Bills' corners, they did give up their fair share of jump balls, but they were there. It's not like they were getting blown out of the water. Some of these, Jets corners, when they've gotten beaten at certain times this season, they weren't really all that close. It's not like it was a jump ball that kind of went one way. Now, there were some times where, Decker got the best of Darby and, beat him handily. But they were right there for the most part. We saw them really lock up this week. Gilmore had a heck of a game this week. Even that first week against Baltimore, it was like one blown coverage, but the D has been solid. And when they were really exposed was week 2, they lost a lot of jump balls. Now, there were other factors why Buffalo lost that game. The defense was on the field for so long. The Bills' defense, by and large, was really good on first and second down. They just were really bad on third down. And it's crazy to think that, football's a game of inches. If one of those passes goes a little high or the Bills' defender is able to tip it a little bit, the Jets have a 3 and out, and then they're off the field. But because they're able to sustain drives, it's a whole different dynamic of the game. But by and large, the Bills' defense has been solid. You cannot say otherwise, especially with what they did last week. They're going against one of these 2 guys, either Brissett or a not healthy Garoppolo. I kind of like Rex's chances. And Rex has been very good against rookie quarterbacks, so especially if it's Brissett. And now you have an idea. You can't really run bootlegs. You cannot run a bootleg 2 weeks in a row. I know it worked for a 20-something yard touchdown. It's not going to work again. Can the Patriots defense play that well again? I don't think so. So I have the Bills 24-21, but I'm not confident at all in it. Why? He's going against the Patriots and Bill Belichick.
Yeah, there's another couple key factors. LeGarrette Blount is someone that, Tyler, you and I have been pretty critical of this offseason. We don't think that he's quite the player, but he leads the league right now in rushing yards. And they've been relying heavily on him and that offensive line. I do think the Bills' run defense, and I think this is where a signing like Brandon Spikes, you make your money, or you get your money's worth from him. When you get a LeGarrette Blount, a big back, and you get that huge thumping linebacker, let's face it, not many people win one-on-one battles against Brandon Spikes. I think that's where he's going to have a big role in this game. Kyle, you mentioned Zach Brown. Names like Zach Brown, Jarrell Worthy, even Corey White, who filled in for Ronald Darby last week. those guys continue to play well. These are guys that we signed late in the off-season and free agency. These are guys that were not even given looks at by other teams. These guys are setting themselves up pretty well. They're all in one-year deals to get some nice paydays. Even Lorenzo Alexander and Leger Douzable, even though they're guys in the latter part of their career, they're playing really well, all those names I mentioned. They were kind of all cast-offs. But by and large, these guys all have a chip on their shoulder. They all have a common goal, and they're all trying to get, let's just face it, one more big payday on one-year deals. Zach Brown's going to make a lot of money this offseason if he continues to play like this.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind him on the Jets, to be honest. That was a position that I wanted this offseason. I was all for Trevathan. I want a linebacker that can cover.
Yeah.
And I think that he would be good in Bowles' defense too, to be honest. But let me say this. Last point that I have to make about this game, and then I'm shut up. I'm done after that. Is the Jets beat the Bills on a lot of jump balls, outside passes, outside the numbers type passes to receivers. New England's receivers don't play like that. So, New England's receivers, how do they win? They win in and out of cuts. They're extremely quick. Now, you can throw the jump ball up to the tight ends, Bennett and Gronk, but most of those guys do their damage over the middle. So, the recipe that the Bills were beaten at handily this season, the Jets in Week 2, the Patriots don't win like that. So I just think that's another thing that we just need to consider here.
I think that a very interesting point, Kyle. I hope you're right, honestly. And you got to remember that the Patriots receivers are not built like the Jets receivers. Amendola, Edelman, Hogan. Even though Hogan's 6'1", they're not built 6'4", 6'3", 6'2". They're not built like those guys. So they play a different style. So I hope that this is more tailor-made to what the Bills can cover. And, they've covered the Jets wide receivers before and done pretty well. But like I said, I hope, Kyle, what you're saying is absolutely true. I don't have the confidence. But if the Bills win every week and I pick them to lose every week, I'll continue to pick them to lose.
Oh, we'll see for certain. Okay, so that's going to do it for this edition of AFC East Bros. You want to follow Gary on Twitter? He's at AFC_East Bro Gary. You got to give him a follow. You're missing out if you're not. If you're not on Twitter, you're a football fan, you listen to podcasts, you are missing out. I'm on Twitter at AFC East Bros. Instagram account is the same thing. Email the show, afceastbros@gmail.com. We've been getting more emails. Thank you guys for that. The show is available on iTunes, Stitcher, all that good stuff. If you want to call in, the number 712-451-001 number, and the PIN number is 321-848. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.